Audio, audio, audio. Well, that's always fun. When you talk on a stream. Is it working now? Well, I think it's working now. Well, that's good. Sorry about that, folks. I should have checked the audio sooner, although, you know, such is the struggles of the stream. My mic was working, like I was seeing. I can see the meters right here where it's picking up my voice, and then for some reason just it was connected to OBS, but then OBS wasn't picking it up, so I don't, and I don't know, like I wish I knew how to just test that before. Like I wish there was a way you could just listen to the stream and then go live, Maybe there is a way and I just don't know how, but sorry folks. Good thing I didn't start any of the story though, obviously. A quick, hopefully you can hear me now, folks. If anybody was trying to watch before, I apologize. I didn't start the story, so that's good. I was about to. Yeah, I won't go into everything that I said before. I was just rambling mostly, like I like to do at the start of the stream, getting warmed up. But essentially all I was saying is read other stories, check out other stories' titles, because they can be inspiring to you as a writer. And yeah, I was just going on and on about that in a very self gratifying sort of way. And so I'm not glad that the audio wasn't working, but I feel like my stream does that to punish me if I'm being a little too self-indulgent. Uh, well, from what I can tell, my audio is working now, so I'm gonna see. I still don't know if I got headphones and hooked them up to my Rodecaster. I don't know, because my Rodecaster was working fine, so I don't know if that would help. But maybe there's a way to hook up. Maybe not to hear what you guys are hearing, because there'd be a delay and it would make it impossible to talk. But some way to know if the audio's just down. I mean, the way you tell is you go in here and you look at your mic and is it being picked up? But shouldn't it also be going here for audio output capture? See, this is where I just show that I don't know what I'm doing, and that is unfortunate. But what can you do? What am I gonna do? Not read these stories? No, I'm gonna read them. All right, Tour of the Dead. Oh shit! I think I cut off my. Yeah, I. Oh. Cut out my background music here. Let's get it back on. You just fine. Well, I try, rude dude. Thank you. I always feel a lot better when you're here, buddy. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a bummer cuz I don't know. I don't know. I wish there was a way to just be able to instantly be like, "Oh, something's wrong," and no. But I feel like I always gotta uh, fumble fumble the ball for like 20 minutes before I realize something's wrong. So hopefully, yeah. Let's see, 24. Okay, hopefully the music's not too loud. Let me know if it is. Tour of the Dead. Brush off the cobwebs. Here we go. Tour of the Dead. From the end of the page, or end of the page. Yeah, sorry, the part of the chat was cut off, but I figured you meant like when you said you just fine, or when I thought you said you just fine, I figured you meant like the audio's just fine. I didn't think you were, making a comment about my sexual appeal, but a man can dream, right? I can dream that people are thirsting after me across the interweb. You know, I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's wrong to be wanted. God. All right, Tour of the Dead. Only in the spiraling depths of the infinite shades of black behind my eyelids do I ever feel at peace. Damn, that's quite a first sentence, if I do say so myself. Only in the spiraling depths of the infinite shades of black behind my eyelids do I ever feel at peace. The near constant pressure behind my eyes fades, and the constant weight that bears down on my shoulders eases. And it is here, in the garage of the old asylum. Interesting. In the garage of the old asylum, that I feel a sense of calm. Stan? The quivering voice is barely a whisper. I'm here. The words spring up from somewhere deep in my chest. I let out a sigh. Yeah. Well, I won't tell her if you won't, rude dude. Anyways, back to the story. Um Okay, so I'm here is in response to a voice whispering Stan. I'm here. The words spring up from somewhere deep in my chest. I let out a sigh and allow myself to rise back to consciousness. Like a bubble of air surfacing in a murky pond, my eyelids flutter, then open. The room around me is still dark, but my eyes adjust quickly and I pick out Reggie's hunched form at the far edge of the room. Your boot is untied. His voice is still a whisper, though the quiver is mostly gone. I check my watch. It is a few minutes past 1 in the morning. I find my feet and strike a match. A small flame burns like a mini sun to my dilated pupils. I give them a moment to adjust before the light of the old gas-fueled lantern. Before I light the old gas-fueled lantern and lift it high. The light chases shadows to every corner of the room, and reflections of the flame dance in Reggie's eyes. A lantern's cool. I immediately have to wonder what time period. It says old gas fuel lantern, so I assume this is kind of a modern story, like a story set in a modern time, I mean, but God, lanterns are so creepy the way they cast shadows and shit that, like, I almost just wonder if it's not. I mean, it depends on how dark this asylum is that they're in, but I almost wonder, like, you know, how often do people just end up scaring the shit out of themselves because they have a lantern instead of like a flashlight, or instead of just letting their eyes adjust, you know? 'Cause yeah, the way the shadows dance across the wall, and the way that, like, you know, you'll hold like a lantern up, and then something small will cast like a huge shadow to where, yeah, it can just be so menacing. But I like it for the ambiance of the story. I'm digging it. This mention of an old gas fueled lantern, it kind of just makes me be like, it's just more foreboding, you know? It's one thing to be in an insane asylum with flashlights or whatever, like if they're kids exploring this old haunted place is kind of where I assume it's going, but it's in my opinion, it's like 5 times scarier to be doing it with a lantern. The light chases shadows to every corner of the room, and the reflections of the flames dance in Reggie's eyes. I take a moment to study the boy. Oh my, is he talking about Reggie? Okay, I was like, that just took a turn if this dude has like an imprisoned boy in this insane asylum or something. I don't know. I gotta keep reading, but that came out of left field for me. He is still young but reliable. I can hear the fear in his voice. I can see it in his posture. His fear makes him wise. Only a fool would not fear this place. Okay, so I'm assuming Reggie is the boy. 4 short raps at the garage bay door pull my attention back to the task at hand. Reggie jumps at the sound. Reggie jumps at the sound, then glances foolishly in my direction. I only watch him, unjudging. Let's get this show on the road. The garage door. Okay, so sorry, I'm just trying to really paint this picture, and sometimes in a story it takes me a second to really like kind of map it out in my mind. But they're in the garage of an old asylum, and garages aren't typically something I associate with like an old asylum, but it would kind of make sense that it has some sort of like a loading, whether it's like a garage for like food deliveries and stuff, or maybe it's like a garage for like patient, you know, they're transferring people in like ambulances or whatever from like hospitals presumably, so like it would make sense for them to have sort of an enclosed like area where, you know, the ambulance pulls in and they get the person out in like a straitjacket or whatever sort of thing. You know, I'm picturing like asylums were largely associated with like before, what was it, like before Reagan, I think, closed them down. Like that's when America had asylums officially. We don't have asylum, they're at least not called, at least to my knowledge, asylums anymore. But I mean, the problem is that they did that where they closed them all down, and a lot of people were wrongfully in asylums, you know, for like conditions that, you know, today we would just be like, oh, you're depressed or whatever, but they were like wrongfully sort of imprisoned in asylum. So I guess it was a good thing in some respects, but it also let a huge portion of the like mentally ill public like just back on the streets with no like life skills or resources, which also just is another aspect of like asylums history that I find like troubling and scary. Like when they closed the asylums down, like I'm sure some people might have went to like prisons or other hospitals and stuff, but I just have to wonder, like, during that time, like how many people were put back on the street that either had no business being on the street, meaning they were like, you know, violent, you know, murderers, homicidal, whatever, or had no like possible way to survive, you know. And I guess like the whole idea of the garage of the asylum just kind of is making me think of all this stuff. Like, oh, I guess an asylum, you know, they would have to have like a garage area or maybe, you know, something like that. So I'm just kind of, I'm picturing that. And then so we have Reggie, we have Stan, who's our narrator, and then their 4 short raps at the garage bay door pull my attention back to the task at hand. Reggie jumps at the sound, then glances foolishly in my direction. I only watch him, unjudging. Let's get the show on the road. Pat is the groundsman. He came on a few years back to help with the tours, but just couldn't cut it. Now his job is to collect the fees and sneak the guests past the night guards. In truth, the guards know what takes place within these old walls, but they don't care. Sneaking past them does add a level of excitement for our customers, though. Oh, interesting. Okay. So now we get some idea that Pat is the groundsman, which I don't know why an old asylum would need a groundsman and security guards, but whatever, you know, I'll suspend some disbelief, or maybe, you know, maybe it needs a groundsman because it's like this tourist attraction type place. But then there's this idea that the night guards know that people are going in to tour this old asylum or whatever, but they sneak them in because it heightens, which that totally would. I mean, if I was going on some ghost tour, then they were like, all right, everybody, shh, we gotta wait for the guards to go on their rounds or whatever, and then they sneak in past, like, that would be awesome. If I got to go on a ghost tour like that, I would love that. I would be all for it. Pat's signal from the outside is to let us know how many groups will be joining the tour. 4 knocks means 4 parties, each left at a different entrance, each waiting to be collected. Which entrances are active? I asked Reggie in a hushed tone as we walked through the double doors and into the first of a labyrinth of corridors that snake through the old complex. The halls are wide and barren. Voices carry effortlessly down the worn tiled hallways. It's the first week of the month, Reggie says. The Pat should be using the west side foyer. West side foyer, room 112 with the missing window. Okay, interesting. Rec room entrance, and Reggie trails off. I give him a minute before opening my mouth to speak, but he comes up with it at the last moment. Call 2B at the fire door exit. Good, I say. Have the keys? I have the keys. And why do we use lanterns? Flashlights fail, batteries die, oil always burns. What are the rules? Everyone stays together, no exceptions. Stick to the main hallways and common rooms. Some rooms can be opened on special requests, but none of the rooms on the second floor, west wing, and no rooms that have red X's on the doors. The kid's a quick learner. Oh, okay. So part of this story isn't formatted super great because there's all these quotes within the same paragraph, which is fine. I'll figure it out, but this is Stan asking Reggie here, what are the rules? And then this is Reggie repeating them back to Stan, because I'm guessing Stan is like training Reggie, or Reggie had to remember the entrances that the people would be left at, and so I'll do a different voice for Reggie, like, everyone stays together, no exceptions. Stick to the main hallways and common rooms. Some rooms can be open on special requests, but none of the rooms on the second floor, west wing, and no rooms that have red X's on the doors. The kid's a quick learner. He will be running the tours by himself soon enough. You seem to have it well in hand, I say. I'll let you run the whole thing tonight. I'll just observe. Reggie makes a face with 2 parts pride and 1 part doubt, but says nothing. The hallway leads us to the first of many intersections, and wordlessly, we drop to one knee. We drop to one knee, cross ourselves, then stand and pass through the intersection. Neither of us look left or right as we pass through the intersecting hallway. I catch movement in the corner of my eye as we pass, but keep my eyes locked ahead. We always do this at intersections. We never look. Pat looked once. He never set foot inside the asylum again. He had been lucky. They must be making a killing, man, to do this, because this place sounds haunted as shit. I mean, obviously it is. That's why people want to go in, but I don't know. I'm like, these kids, or this guy and this kid are kind of crazy. We walk on in silence, listening to our footsteps and the hint of echoing footsteps following behind us as we go. Soon enough, we arrive at the asylum's western entrance. Reggie pulls a key from his belt, knocks 3 times on the door, unlocks it, and lets the door creak slowly open. The doors to the outside remain unlocked, but the inner foyer doors are always kept secured. It is just one of many waiting rooms that we use as meeting points for our guests. The smaller the size of each group sneaking onto the grounds, the less likely they are to be caught by the night guards or by anything else that stalks these grounds. Okay, interesting. This part of me is like, well, why, if the night guards know that people are sneaking in, or like maybe they know, maybe they don't completely allow it, but maybe they're like, it is what it is. And so I was like, why do they need to like hide them in before? But it makes sense that if this place is really so fucking haunted, that they don't just want people wandering around like at the beginning of the tour or whatever. So they're like, they keep them in secure locations and they come and collect them. Which is, it's really smart. Like, it's really, I don't know, this tour just sounds fucking cool. Already I'm like, this sounds like an awesome ghost tour. So often, I mean, it's not like I've been on a lot of ghost tours, but I've seen a few videos of like people going on them and stuff. And so often it just seems like one person who's the tour guide, but they're really like, and in this room, and they're really like trying to just tell you all the history and stuff that they know, which makes sense for a regular tour guide. But if it's like a ghost tour guide, I almost want them to be like not saying much, just let you experience it, like let you, and you can ask questions or whatever, and like, stuff like that. But I feel like this is setting such a better tone for horror. I'm loving it so far. I'm very locked in, and I like the idea with the name, because one thing I was saying for the name Tour for the Dead, I was like, I wonder if it's gonna be like, this is a tour of hell, or something like that, or this is a tour of the afterlife, and like somehow it's somebody's job to like take souls on a tour where they're like, we're not sending you to hell or heaven yet, but this is maybe what awaits you. And so I thought maybe it's gonna be like a sort of like whatever Ghost of Christmas Past sense of like, but instead of showing you like in A Christmas Carol how it shows Ebenezer Scrooge like the past, the present, and the future of his life, instead of that, it's like, I'm showing you a glimpse into the afterlife, and what awaits you, kind of thing, which I don't think that's what the story is. I don't think it's going to fully go there, but I like the idea of like a tour for the dead. So it's like, they're taking you on a tour of this haunted ass asylum, and yeah, it's just cool. It's just cool that they have it such down to a science, right? Like in the sense that like when they go through an intersection of hallways, they know not to look right or left. Who knows if they'll make the people going on the tour, if they'll make them adhere to that rule, we'll see. But they're like, in order for us to be able to keep doing this, we can't fully like, we can't just go explore this place, or we can't just fully like buy into it, because we got to be able to come back and keep doing this, right? So I don't know, I think that that's a fun kind of I like the idea of taking a commercial approach to like a horror scenario, or to like a dangerous supernatural experience of being like, well, this is my job, so we gotta be able to do this, and I gotta make sure Reggie knows the pickup places for the right nights and stuff, like I think that's really fun, because it's already establishing rules and things, like how it talked about the second level and don't go in any door with an X on it. We're already getting so much specific rules that clearly, when broken, shit's gonna go poorly, we can assume, right? But and obviously throughout the story, it's like, I assume some of these rules are probably gonna be broken and people are gonna suffer the consequences, but it's so much more fun than just being like, we're gonna walk around this old asylum and see what happens, as four strangers who have never been in it. Like, it's fun to have people who are aware of the space, aware of what it can do, and know some of the rules as to how to survive it. Like, to me, that just makes it more fun, because already you're not going into the horror story thing with the idea of like, well, why are they doing this, or why don't they just leave once things start going bad? It's like there's already built-in reasons as for why not only Reggie and Stan this is their job, but then also like these people are paying for this experience, right? So like a lot of people, even if they get scared, they're gonna want to be like seen as brave in front of their friends, they're gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna chicken out, you know. So it just creates a lot of fun dynamics already off the rip. I like it. And then this line is awesome, or anything else that stalks these grounds. As the door opens, 4 beams of light shine in our faces. Reggie and I are used to it. The guests are nervous and have been waiting for us. Lights down, please, Reggie says in a low voice. Yeah, well, and that's kind of what I meant, rude dude, when I was... Yeah, that's kind of what I meant by, like, what I'm liking about, the story so far is, like, who knows, maybe one of these tour people will be, like, some sort of, like, clickbait YouTuber, but yeah, clickbait YouTubers have ruined it for me, too, in the sense that a lot of the times, too, it's like, you know, it's just them going and, like, having fun and making jokes, but, even, like, the tour guides and the people, it's like they seem like they just want to be the star of the video rather than, like, just let the creepiness kind of unfold. And so that's the other issue with me with those places, is like, even on these, like, ghost hunter shows, is like, you always have the one person who's, like, familiar with the haunted area that's, like, showing the ghost adventurer or ghost hunter around, and it always seems like they're so determined to be, like, on TV that, like, yeah, it just gets in the way of the creepiness, you know. And so I like the idea of there's this tour where it's like, it's kind of like grassroots, or like guerrilla, like it's like a guerrilla tour where they're like, they have this one groundskeeper guy who, like, shows the people in and puts them in an area, and then they're like, we'll come get you. And it just, you know, it has a very foreboding vibe about it, and the fact that they already know rules and stuff for them to follow is just really fun. Now, who knows, the story could change where it's like all of a sudden Stan is being like, this asylum was built in 1940 blah 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 by, you know, this person, and then I might be like, oh, okay, well, shit. But right now it's not giving those vibes, so I'm into it. Lights down, please, Reggie says in a low voice. You can leave your flashlights on the table and collect the lanterns, and please hold all questions until we have picked up the remaining guests. Oh, okay. So this is, you can leave your flashlights on the table and collect the lanterns, and please hold all questions until we have picked up the remaining guests, I add. Reggie grimaces. Please hold all questions until we pick up the rest of the guests, he echoes. I smile, more to myself than to him. He already will not forget the line again. See, and I like that already they're like, and don't ask questions. You know, at least not yet. I like that. Our party moves down the building's central corridor and quickly picks up the next group from room 112 who had come through the missing window, then onto the stairwell and the second floor. At the end of Hall B, we open the door that lets out onto a fire escape to pick up our third party of guests before heading back to the ground floor. Rec room is the rec room is in the southeast corner of the building. Normally it is just a quick couple of turns, however, with guests in tow, we opt for the safer route of going around the outside perimeter hallways. Until the group is together and we can go over the rules, it's best to avoid any of the intersections, or worse, the central cathedral. Damn. Halfway down the western corridor, Reggie stops short and tips his head. I stop as well and close my eyes. If he hears something, it would not be wise to speak over it. Our guests seem to pick up on this as well, or perhaps they're all just too nervous to talk. Either way, they stand silent, listening. There it is, a dull rapping sound, like someone tapping on a glass door with their knuckles. In all the years I had been doing this tour, I had not heard that sound before, and believe me, I had heard plenty of others. Could it be? It's a warm night, Reggie says, to nobody in particular. It is the first non-whisper that anyone in the building has spoken that night, and the tour group recoils back as though he had shouted the words. I give the kid an approving nod. He had remembered, make noise, but do not address the sound directly. It is one of the cardinal rules. Never engage with anything that might be listening. Oh, I love that. So smart. It's like, it's that whole thing of like, I've heard some people where they talk about haunted places where they're like, if you see something weird, like don't point it out. Don't try to engage with it. Like if you have people around that you're talking with, don't be like, everyone shut up, listen. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? You know what I mean? When you do that, like there's a sentiment amongst some like supernatural believers or like ghost believers that like if you don't bother them, they won't bother you kind of thing. And if they're fumbling or tapping or noise or making a door open, or they're just going about their business in the afterlife, so you should just go about your business in life. And if you do that, it's when you start to try to get them to stop, or you start to like over investigate things. Like you can listen and be aware of it and maybe be like, like speaking like silently, like, or with like your hands and stuff to like people in your party and be like, are you hearing that sort of thing? But once you really start to be like overt and whatever, that's when people say that like, that's when bad shit happens, or when you start to feel like spirits get angry or shit like that. And it's just really it's really fun. I don't know, I'm already, like I said, we have the rules and the other things, but with this whole like Reggie just says, and it's the first time he says it not in a whisper, he just goes, it's a warm night. And I bet everyone else in the group is like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like there's a fucking noise, you know what I mean? What the hell is this kid talking about? But it's like, it's one of the rules. You just say something, but you don't, and you say it like somewhat loud, but you don't acknowledge the noise directly. It's one of the cardinal rules. Never engage with anything that might be listening. Some spirits could be harmless, helpful even, but others could be vengeful, violent. The tapping does not stop. Sounds like glass, Reggie says, catching up to my earlier thought. The atrium. Once more, I let out a sigh. Pat mixed up the rooms again. Reggie huffs in aggravation, but I can see the tension drain from his face. There is nothing for it. We turn the group around and guide them back the way they came. It is a few short moments to the atrium. Two figures can be seen through the heavy glass doors. They must have seen our shapes pass by the hallway moments earlier. They must have been nervous, perhaps unsure if we were the tour group or some form of wandering spirits, but they had knocked as instructed when we missed their pickup schedule. Not all groups did. So Pat put them in the wrong spot, and so they were going somewhere else. And then when they saw them pass by, that was the tapping on the glass that they heard. Okay. Reggie unlocks the glass doors, and a few relieved and awkward grins are exchanged all around. Lanterns are distributed to the new group, and Reggie begins running through the orientation speech. He covers the hallway intersection, noises in rooms, eye contact, and other various rules that we have established over the years. I take my time to inspect the people who have joined us for tonight's tour. Most people who came would come in groups, and those groups generally stuck pretty close together. Further, the groups we picked up from each different waiting room seemed to stick together as well, likely due to the fact that they had time to talk and mingle before descending upon the silent corridors of the old asylum. Groups are all pretty run-of-the-mill tonight. The foyer group has 2 couples and a 5th wheel. Loners are most apt to wander off, so I make a mental note to keep my eye on their spare. Room 112's group appears to be made up of college students. The atrium had the smallest party. Its group consists of 2 Asian men in cheap suits, traveling businessmen likely looking for some thrills to spice up their boring conference trip. The second floor group is the most diverse, consisting of a family that includes the parents along with 2 teens as well as a geriatric gentleman. Everyone who had signed on for the tour had signed disclaimers, assuming Pat had gotten that part of his job correct. But I make a mental note to keep an eye on the older man as well. As Reggie finishes his spiel, I raise my lantern and start off into the labyrinth of hallways. Reggie follows and our guest falls into step behind him. Okay, so now he is doing the spiel, but I'm still in. I still like it. I was expecting some sort of a history point to come in, and it's actually smart for a story to have this, because rather than like people just investigating something and like reading a newspaper on the wall or something, it's like it's just another way to give the reader some, sense of this place. And so I'm not mad at it, and I especially like that he went over the rules first, like this is serious, and then now he's going over this spiel, and it says his voice barely above a whisper, but it carries to the entire group with ease. So is it Sternvirum? Yeah, Sternvirum Asylum was founded in 1869, Reggie begins. His voice is barely above a whisper, but it carries to the entire group with ease. The original building was commissioned by a minister who wanted to build a cathedral, but he died before the work was completed. We led the troop away from the outer perimeter hallways and deeper into the long abandoned and neglected hallways. Reggie continues. His family would eventually donate the land to the doctor who had radical ideas regarding the mental toll of the Civil War on soldiers that fought in it, as well as the civilians caught up in its wake. I stop at a hallway, drop, cross myself, then watch to be sure everyone in the group does the same before moving through the intersection. Did the story explain what the cross myself was? There was the thing where like they got down on their knees, right? At an intersection or something. I don't know, maybe I missed it. But I stop at a hallway, cross myself, or are they doing like those type of cross every time I forget what this is called that Catholics do, a Hail Mary, I think. Maybe not. Maybe that's wrong. But yeah. I stop at a hallway, drop, cross myself, then watch to be sure everyone in the group does the same before moving through the intersection. Dr. Sternvirum would expand the original chapel and outbuildings extensively over the years, connecting them. As he expanded the grounds, he expanded his patients. He took on additional mental patients to attain federal grants and funding to continue his research on what we now refer to as PTSD. As I walk, and cross my way through the asylum, I fall into autopilot and withdraw as much as possible into myself. Reggie is keeping a good eye on the guests, and the first leg of our tour is generally rather uneventful. I let my mind wander. "You keep grinning at me," Reggie mutters under his breath. I pull back out of autopilot and look at him. His gaze is locked on the two Asian businessmen. We are near the end of the preliminary tour and are standing in an observation room on the second floor. He looks down on the northeastern day room. The day room has always been a surefire spot to observe paranormal activity. Today is no exception. A lone wheelchair is rolling in a never-ending circle near the far wall. The more skeptical in the group will convince themselves it is staged. Reggie and I know better. Oh my god, that's so creepy. A lone wheelchair is rolling in a never-ending circle near the far wall. So it's just over there like some ghost is being like, "Who stole my pudding?" That's what I imagine the ghost is doing. He's just like, where's my radio? Or whatever. Reggie absently reaches out and grabs the arm of one of the college students who was about to wave at the chair. The boy gives Reggie an irritated but resigned look. Waving is a form of engaging the entity. He should know better. That's the thing. It's like, you give a bunch of people on a tour like this rules, there's always going to be one or two shitheads that are just like, well, I'm just going to do what they say not to do, because then that's when I'll prove that this is bullshit, or then that's when I'll prove that the ghosts are real, And it's like, oh god. I wait a moment further to be sure the kid won't try again, then cast a glance at the Asian men. As I watch, the pair turn from the observation window and look at myself and Reggie before looking back through the glass. Both men have smiles on their faces. "They're nervous," I whisper to Reggie. "The grinning is just a cultural thing. It's fine. Just keep an eye on them. If they seem to start sweating too much, or if you don't think they can handle it, let me know." Reggie relaxes visibly. Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't know if he was saying that like all the people were smiling or if it's just the Asian businessmen, but I was like, yeah, maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe it's that maybe it's that, like, I wouldn't even know. know for sure if it's a cultural thing, but I know when I'm scared or when I'm in these sort of like haunted corn maze type situations or whatever, it's like I'm smiling and laughing just as much as I am being like, oh fuck, and like being scared or whatever, you know. And so I could imagine that like I might be one of these smiling people too, that like as soon as they start like going on the spiel and telling me all the rules and shit, I'm just like, cool, okay, I'll listen to you, you know. I'll listen to you, buddy, don't worry, you know, kind of thing, just as a way of like not even hiding how I'm scared, but more that like if I start to act really scared, you know, it might get to me, but if I like put on a fake veneer of happiness, like, you know, I'll be able to continue that throughout the tour, even though I'm getting really fucking scared, kind of thing, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. That's very, very funny, though. I study the men before adding, yeah, they're just nervous. Before adding, yeah, they're just nervous. But something is nagging me. Something feels off. While I had been zoned out in the first stretch of the tour, I had noted the unusual lack of activity. The beginning is generally quiet, but never this quiet. There's always a door slamming, or a glass breaking, or even the sound of a mild sobbing while traversing the hallways. Tonight it had been silent up until the observation room, too silent. I shake my head. There's no such thing as too silent in these halls. Tunnel vision kills, I reminded myself. I rubbed the back of my stiff neck, trying to work a knot out, then lift my lantern to take in the whole group. If I focus on one guest too much, I may miss another guest making a mistake. We had lost guests before. In fact, we had lost both guests and tour guides from tunnel vision. It was a mistake I was not planning on making tonight. Oh my god. So when they say lose guests, I mean, does it mean die? Maybe that's why there would be security guards on this place. If people sneak in for tours, but then people go missing, or guides go or they even just get killed and like they find their bodies and shit, like then I would say, okay, that makes sense why there's security then. A mistake I was not planning on making tonight. I give the Asian businessmen another once over. They still seem to be studying Reggie and me and copying all our movements and gestures as closely as they can. They are nervous, but attentive. The old man is looking through the observation window with incredulity, but he looks fine as well. I see no reason to cut the tour short. After one last glance at the college students, I make eye contact with Reggie and give him a short nod. He nods almost more to himself than to me. The tour will continue. Underground. That is where the real activity is. There are a few rooms above ground with red marks banning entry. On the several sub-ground levels, though, nearly every door is marked. The underground is where the experimental treatments were administered. It is where men suffered, died. It is where some of the more dangerous spirits in this cursed building linger. There are 7 entrances to the underground, but only one that we use. The entrance is at the center of the asylum, just beside the doors to the original cathedral. Reggie starts the group moving again, and I fall into step at the rear to keep an eye on our guests. Reggie continues his spiel. As Dr. Sternvirum built his expansions, he kept the cathedral at the heart of the structure. Some think he was a religious man and valued his patients having a place to pray. a place to pray and reflect. Others believe that he wanted a place close by in order to petition God for forgiveness for the atrocities he was committing just below its holy foundation. I watch as the group drops in unison to cross themselves before passing through the next hallway. One of the teens, the boy, glances to his right as he crosses the hallway. He turns his head back quickly, whether from startlement or indifference, I cannot tell. "Eyes front," I whisper. The boy's ears turn red and his shoulders bunch up. He is embarrassed and scared. That is good. He won't risk looking again. As I cross the hallway's intersection, I feel the temperature drop. My pulse quickens, and I do everything I can to prevent my pace from increasing to match it. Not engage. Oh, sorry, no one's saying that. It's just, do not engage. The words bounce around my empty skull as I stave off the natural impulses of fight or flight. It burns. A voice breathes in my ear, and I can feel its breath on my earlobe as the small hairs on my neck stand up straight. The weight of an inhuman presence pushes on the light from my lantern, stretching it out across the hallway unnaturally. Oh, creepy. The light. It's stretching out the light. It's like he feels the presence on the lantern, but then like pushes the light. Oh, that's so cool. I love it. See, this story, if nothing else, I think it's a good story, at least thus far. I'm really enjoying it. But I think it's showing that, like, just with like a wheelchair going in a circle, or the taps, like the taps ended up being the people, but just something simple like a tap, and then being like, talk about the weather, don't engage with it, and then they figure out that it's just more their tour groups, that's cool. And now we get this voice whispers in his ear, which it burns is creepy, but then this idea of he feels the inhuman presence pushes the light from the lantern, and he can see like the light that it's casting is all of a sudden stretching farther away from like this presence, or maybe in the direction of it, like maybe it's going to illuminate it. Like, that is cool, and that is like a unique sort of, visual phenomena that like isn't like boom in your face, like all of a sudden, oh, I saw a dead person hanging from the thing, but it's creepy, it's interesting, I like it. Stretching it out across the hallway unnaturally, I keep my pace and pass through the intersection. The heavy, crushing presence seems to fade behind me to a low hiss. No one else in the tour group had reacted. I doubt if any had heard the voice, but the hairs on the back of my neck are standing on end. Is it following us? Not engage. Did the spirit latch onto me, or perhaps onto the boy? It's not the type of souvenir one wants to bring home from a place like this. I make a mental note to make sure we keep an eye on the boy. Oh, okay, yeah, I think it's the boy who got embarrassed, maybe? But then earlier, when it was just him and Reggie in the garage room, he mentioned this boy too, so now I'm kind of confused, because I'm like, was he talking about Reggie, or is there like, I don't know. Anyways, I think we'll figure it out here soon. But wouldn't it be creepy if there's just like a ghost with them on the tour the whole time as like one of the members? I'm almost wondering if those Asian businessmen too are, you know, they're smiling, but what if they've just been ghosts this whole time and he didn't, and we're gonna figure out that Pat didn't take them to the wrong door or whatever. Yeah, already it's very fun. I like that it's giving me so many ways in which I'm wondering where like additional ghosts and just spooky, you know, presences can come into this. I think that's really really fun. Here, sorry, I'm just real quick, I'm taking a second to I just want to delete the previous live where the audio wasn't working, so it doesn't confuse people when they're trying to watch it back. Okay. I keep fucking up this name. Sternvirum believed in very aggressive treatments, and he pioneered methods that today would be considered little more than torture. He also believed in putting patients out of their comfort zones and often hired doctors who would only further traumatize their patients. For Union soldiers, he would hire doctors from the deep south with thick southern draws. The idea was to make patients face their fears. This practice was continued by his successors by hiring German and Italian doctors after the Great War, adding Japanese doctors after World War II. See? So maybe this is our Asian businessmen, right? You know, could be like new hires touring the facility or like investors or something, you know? And Japanese doctors after World War II, and finally Russian and Chinese doctors during the Cold War. So basically he's just like, whatever will scare my traumatized soldier patients with PTSD, or they weren't all soldiers, it said they were like citizens who were traumatized. They were like, whatever nationality of person traumatized them, I'm gonna hire those doctors to be that nationality of people to be the doctors, which is, I mean, obviously it's like, it's all building in the ambiance of why this place was so torturous and why it's so haunted now. But that is so creepy just on a fucking evil doctor level. Like, fuck the ghosts or the haunting. Like, could you imagine being a civil war, like you fought for the northern side and then all of a sudden all the people that you fight or that you fought with, you know, had southern draws and were like good old boys from down south, and then you go into this facility and all the doctors have southern accents? Like, that is just creepy. Like, ugh. We cross another hallway. I cannot tell if the presence we cross another hallway. I cannot tell if the presence behind me is still there, or if this growing sense of unease is due to getting closer to the cathedral. Reggie, still aware of my growing concerns, continues on. Between doctor and patient tensions and the implementation of methods such as ice baths, steam rooms, electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and other heinous treatments, many patients suffered mental breakdowns, and ultimately, over the years, several doctors and staff were killed by their patients. Many more of the patients committed suicide. In fact, it was rumored that several orderlies ran a quite profitable business of selling the patients everything from medications to overdose on to rope to hang themselves with. Ahead of me, Reggie rounds the final corner that leads to the basement. The troop disappears around the corner one by one. With them out of view and against my better judgment, I cast a short glance over my shoulder. A lone man stands in the middle of the last intersection. The telltale burns on his temples and blood seeping from his eyes tell me he had suffered electrotherapy and a lobotomy. I give no sign that I see him, mustering all my will on focusing my eyes through him as though he is not there. See? This is interesting too, because even if you do see them, it's like when you let them know you see them, that is what causes them to keep like pursuing you. So this whole idea that like if you see the ghost, they're just always going to assume that they can't be seen, right? And so like they're used to people not noticing them, and so if you just see them but like don't react and just kind of stare through them, like they'll pass on by. And see, this is just smart. Like this is just good, thoughtful, right? Especially for people who are like experienced with the paranormal. This to me makes sense. Like I like that they're not just like, oh my god, did you see that guy? What the hell? You know what I mean? Like that. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I give no sign that I see him, mustering all my will on focusing my eyes through him as though he is not there. I count to 3 in my head, then turn back and round the corner. Alarms go off in my head. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong. First, Reggie and the tour group are already halfway to the stairwell. I had stopped only a few seconds before turning the corner, and now Reggie and the tour group are better than 100 yards down the corridor. Second, and more concerning, is the time loss. The great doors to the cathedral stand wide open. These doors are kept shut, always. We check them before every tour. We double lock and triple check them. I did this just before meeting Reggie in the garage. There is no way they could be open now. No way, unless... Finally, Reggie is continuing down the hallway as though nothing is wrong. His path to the underground will take him straight past the doors of the cathedral, and he is showing no sign of stopping. Do not engage, the words pound through my head like a mantra. I cannot shout out. I cannot risk the noise, cannot risk awakening what lingers in the cathedral. I sprint forward. It is risky, but I see no alternative. The tour group and Reggie are my responsibility. I have to stop them. The shadows on the walls stretch and churn, upset by sudden movement. The light from my lantern arcs around the walls in a psychedelic and seizure-inducing patterns as it jolts up and down with my unsteady gait. But even as I run, I know I will not make it in time. I watch in horror as Reggie reaches the entrance and passes by without so much as a glance. The tour group follows behind him, first the college kids, then the old man. One of the older couples passes by, and they seem to shiver as they do. Do they not see? How could they miss it? Did Reggie see and tell them to keep their eyes ahead, like in the intersecting hallways? The teens and their parents pass next. The boy seem to misstep, but keeps his head locked in forward position. The group is nearly in the clear. Just a few more. The Asian businessmen in their suits are passing out. No, not passing, stopping. Stopping and turning. Turning just their heads. Turning not just their heads, but their whole bodies. I am screaming now as I run, screaming at the top of my lungs, but no sound is coming out. I am running flat out, but the shadows that were first stretching across the walls are now stretching the walls themselves, stretching out the hallway, making it longer and slowing my progress through it. Oh, damn. One of the men reaches a hand into his pocket. When he pulls his hand free from his jacket, he is holding a syringe. He waves as if signaling to someone inside the room. The second man moves forward slowly, momentarily blocking the first from my view. He then burst into the room in a single violent action. I skid to a halt, and peripherally I see the shadows rush past me on the walls. The man with the syringe is in view again, but he no longer looks like a businessman. His suit is gone, replaced with green surgical apron. He walks purposely through the doors of the cathedral. Then the screaming begins. See, the doctors, I knew it. I coax my legs to move again, but I find myself stepping up to the doorway of the cathedral. It's a massacre. 3 figures in little white scrubs lie motionless on the floor, their white uniforms splattered with dark red sprays of blood. The 2 Asian doctors are there as well. One of them is kicking and screaming in Japanese as the patient on top of him is throttling him with his bare hands. The other lies dead with the syringe he had carried stuck through his own temple. "Stan!" Reggie snaps and then sucks in a short breath. I jump at Reggie's voice cuts into my thoughts. I rip my attention from the cathedral massacre to see him looking at me with concern on his face. The tour group stand behind him. How? I started without knowing what to ask. Reggie holds up his hand to still the tour group as he looks down the hallway, where he starts then trails off. As if in answer, the voice of the Japanese doctor screaming in his native tongue echoes through the hallways around us. Reggie and every member of the tour group flinch instinctively, and several people clap their hands over their ears. My head jolts back to the cathedral doors. They are closed and locked, double locked. I reach out a hand and yank at the chain. It does not move. Reggie looks the doors up and down, clearly concerned. The businessmen. I look past Reggie and scan the face of the tour group. The businessmen are not there. We are too short, or rather, we were always too short. The Japanese businessmen were not tourists at all. They were doctors, dead doctors. Spirits continuing on their work in death as they had in life, studying, observing, and when necessary, administering treatments. Tourist, patient, spirit, they knew no difference. We were lucky, very lucky. From Reggie's pale white face, I could see he knew that as well. Tour's over. Reggie manages a gulp. There are a few groans of protest, but Reggie silences them quickly. The garage is a short walk from where we are, and we get there without incident. Pat is waiting for us. "Short tour," Pat says. It is an observation, not a question. He can see the strain on Reggie's face. He knows something happened. He does not ask. He does not want to know. "The atrium," I start, but Reggie cuts me off. "The atrium is compromised," he tells Pat. Pat's face turns sour. "And you'll have to collect the group from the rec room and give them refunds," Reggie adds. "We never pick them up." Pat looked confused, but does not argue. He does a quick head count, then ushers our guests out of the asylum and into the night. Pat didn't mix up the drop-off points. Reggie's voice is low but even. It is the voice of someone whose parachute failed and had to resort to the reserve chute. I don't answer. I just stare past him. "Businessman," he trails off. I shake my head and start swaying gently from side to side. "I'll understand if you..." Reggie cuts me off, his voice seemingly far away. We're good. We're all good. Good. I repeat the words, still staring past him, staring at the boots that sway back and forth, dangling over his shoulder. They look so familiar. The left boot is double knotted. The right lace hangs untied. They look like my boots. Oh shit. Reggie gives me a hard look, then glances over his shoulder to see what I'm looking at. He inhales sharply and turns back to me. See you at the next tour, Stan, he says quickly as he turns and heads for the door. I open my mouth to respond, but my bloated tongue no longer allows words to pass. My neck itches where the bruises and rope burns still sting. I reach out a hand towards the swaying boots below me, desperately wanting to retie the right lace, eternally unable to do so. The door closes behind Reggie. I am left in the darkness, left to hang, to sway, to wait. Stan? Reggie's voice is barely a whisper. The words spring up from somewhere in my chest. I'm here. Ah, so our narrator was a ghost the whole time. He was one of the tour guides that got killed, I'm guessing. That's crazy. That was fun. Fun twist at the end. See, because I was a little let down by the fact that I was like, oh, the smiling, businessman, Asian businessman. Like, I was like, I kind of saw that coming. I mean, our narrator keyed in on them right away as being kind of creepy, and he's like, oh, they're just nervous, but I was a little bit like, with that being like the final reveal of like what was going on in the cathedral or whatever, I was a little bit like, it was cool, but I was like, the fact that the tour's over and they're leaving, I was like, oh shit, but it was still a really cool story. And then the fact that we have that little, what it was a fake out. It was a boom, and then it hit us with that uppercut at the end where, our narrator's been dead the whole time. And it kind of makes sense when he's like, only in the spiraling depths of the infinite shades of black behind my eyes do I ever feel at peace. The near constant pressure behind my eyes fades. So he's like, he's like dead, or he's basically like, he's stuck in this asylum, but it's like he's just zoned out. He's like, whatever. And then all of a sudden, Reggie comes up and he's like, Stan, and then Reggie whispers, I'm here, and that's how they start their little like tour thing. And then that's what we get at the end, right? We get a repetition of that. And I don't know if it was like as Reggie's leaving that he whispers this, or this is now Reggie's back again and he's like, Stan, I'm here. And it's just, what a fun story, man. What a fun fucking story. What a critically undervoted story. I'm definitely leaving a comment too. That was a blast. That was super fun. Sorry. But it is important for me to comment because this story has no comments on it right now, and that is just, I mean, maybe it's posted other places, maybe on some of those other posts. I'm hoping it has a little more love, a little bit more comments, but perfect. We'll just leave a quick little comment. Sorry, I don't like to take up too much time commenting, but wow. I mean, what just a simple, fun story. I had a few little like reservations or like little gripes about like why would there be security guards at this abandoned place? Why would there be security guards that then let these tours come in? Just little things like that. But even those, like, you know, it really wasn't even a problem. It was more of just a like once I got fully into the story and understood completely what was going on, it didn't even matter. And then the fact that we have the fact that we have these tours coming in from these different spots and all these rules, and Stan is like training Reggie, and we have all these kind of fun dynamics, and then we get to see these few visions of ghosts that are just that are haunting enough and like terrifying enough, but at the same time like not um over explained or overdone. They're just kind of right. And they're creepy. The dude with the burns on his face, the wheelchair going around in a circle, and then like at the end with the doctors, as well as like that scene of the one dude with the syringe in his temple, the one doctor, and then the other one getting choked to death by the patient, and he's seeing all this through the cathedral door, and then he looks at Reggie, and then he looks back at the cathedral door, and it's all closed. And I find it really interesting too that like as a ghost, like it would make sense that he's more susceptible to like the other ghost's energy and pain, but maybe because he died there at like a later date, or whatever. It's not like he's just another ghost in that place. It does make sense that he's sort of this like guiding spirit. He's this, that Stan is the tour guide who is forever giving tours for the dead. And that's super fun. And I almost have to wonder, are these ghosts on vacation? Meaning not just the Japanese businessmen, but all of these, are these all people who don't know that they died, and somehow they find themselves on this tour because they're on a ghost vacation or whatever it might be. They're college kids who OD'd, and then they're like, what are we gonna do this weekend? No one's really talking to us, and so they're like, let's go on a ghost tour. Just something crazy like that. Because it was a tour, by the dead, for the dead. And they literally gave the tour to, at least we know, two dead people. So it's like the title fully makes sense. Oh, I just had a blast with this one. I'm definitely a fan. Edge of the page. I will read more of your stuff if it's out there. The story's 2 months old. Please go upvote it, show it some love. I'm trying to show it a lot of love right now, but this was just a fun read. Like I would like to and this is a good story to where I feel like if you got the beats of it down right, like this is a fun campfire story. You know what I mean? Like, yes, it's pretty long, so it's like it's not just something that you could read verbatim, but imagine like you just got told this around a campfire, or you're walking with your friends, like, or you're with your friends, like, because I used to go to the cemetery at night as a kid and stuff, and just to be spooked out. And it's like, imagine, uh like hearing a story like this on a night like that, and it just, it's terrifying. It did a lot of cool things with like the light and the sound, in really fun ways that made it, uh it just like gave it a level of class. I don't quite know if that like makes sense, but like some ghost stories are just so heavy-handed and so like the hook-handed man stabbed my baby and whatever, and it's just like it's just gratuitous and whatever, but this wasn't that. It had a cool backstory for the doctor. It had some really creepy, we got to hear some really creepy history about what this doctor did to people with PTSD and how much he tortured them. And that was really haunting too. And then it's all, set on this tour that we have going on. And it also makes sense. Like at the end, like at first I was taken aback by why he was like the boy and all this. But it makes sense that he's like he knows his name is Reggie, but he's like, I take a moment to study the boy. He is still young but reliable. I can hear the fear in his voice. I can see it in his posture. His fear makes him wise. Only a fool would not fear this place. Like it makes sense that to this like, trapped tour guide spirit of Stan, it makes sense that like this new boy that's taking people on the tour that's replaced him essentially, that he kind of like not looks up to him, but like, sees him, and he's like, the his fear makes him wise, and he's like, he's kind of looking to him with that like fatherly whatever, admiring, that where he's admiring him because he's like, you're taking my place and whatever. I hope you last longer. And it's my job as the dead tour guide to make sure you don't die on this tour, kind of thing. And then because of that too, it ultimately makes sense that our character is the one who sees the most because he is a ghost himself. He sees the most, he experiences the most, he's the most susceptible, but also like at the same time, cuz he's a helpful spirit or whatever, like he's going to try to protect them, and so he's like running after them, and then the hallway stretching out. And I was a little bit there of like, well, I guess he could lose time and things if the ghosts are like messing with his mind. But then, yeah, if like, you know, for a spirit, I'm sure a hallway does stretch out where they're just like walking down it forever. You know what I mean? And so all of the kind of weird, whatever, like liminal weird things that the story did made sense at the end. I was like, I like that. I like, and I'm always a fan of like a benevolent spirit or like a good spirit. I think that that's always a cool element of a story when done correctly, and this story definitely did it correctly. And I am a genuine fan of it. I'm genuinely pleased. What did you think, Rude Dude? If you're still here, or if you got time to type in the chat, did the story prove it wrong? Prove you wrong? Did it do the ghost tour justice? I'm curious to know. Started. Anyways, we'll get into the next story here, which is it started with a smell. But God, it is really bothering me because I swear it's like I swear it's the name that, and maybe I've looked at this story but I haven't read it, and so that's why I think I've read it before. But um, yeah, I'm kind of I'm feeling like perhaps I have read it. Here, maybe what I'll do is I'll do this. I think we're gonna read the last voyage of the Alaskan Dawn first, and then we can end with, because this story is much longer. So we're gonna start with the last voyage of the Alaskan Dawn, and then we'll end with it started with a smell. Because I do want to get to this story too. This story seems very cool. But I also want to read. It's not that I don't want to read this one. It's just that I keep thinking that I have, and it's like I really need to actually read it. Or maybe if I could just read the end real quick. Hmm. All right. Well, I will get to it started with a smell after this story, but next we have from Mike is sometimes right the last voyage of the Alaskan Dawn, which should be promising, should be fun. So let's get into it. From No Sleep too, so shout out to him for getting a story on No Sleep. The last voyage of the Alaskan Dawn. Call me Ike, though that is not my real name. Honestly, with how the last 7 weeks have been, I'm not sure if I could ever go back to my real name. I'm not sure if I could ever go back to my real name. The only thing I can say with total certainty is that I am the sole survivor of the Alaskan Dawn. How I found myself on that ship was born through dumb luck and bad decisions. Like a cook, like a crook doing one last job. I enlisted in the Marines 2 years out of high school. Once I discovered college wasn't for me. The late 2010s meant I was going to Afghanistan. I was supposed to be 2 years active duty and 4 years in the reserves. It was a good career to supplement me until something I actually wanted to do came around. That was that was until April 2019, not a full 6 months into my second year, and an IED went off near my Humvee. I was a gunner, and needless to say, my military career was cut drastically short. I was thankful to have my limbs, but 6 inches of steel pierced my hip. Between that and the ravenous concussion, I was sent home early. To this day, I suffer from tinnitus. It took nearly 4 hours of surgery to remove the steel, but they couldn't get it all. Some of it was too close to a femoral artery that removing it would probably kill me. See, this is fun too, because now this is like the third or fourth I feel like this is at least the third story, at least, where the character has tinnitus. And now this is just giving me more deja vu, because I'm like, I felt useless. I started drinking heavily. I got to the point that 2 months before the anniversary of my survival, I was checked into rehab for alcohol abuse. With COVID and my chances of getting a real job already low, I went back to booze. When the world started back up, I was forced back into rehab. That seemed to stick, and I've been sober ever since. So naturally, I replaced alcohol with gambling. Vice 2 wasn't as easily forgiven. No help from my parents, and I can't blame them. When I was 22 and struggling, they wanted to nurse their baby boy, but 27, they weren't about to shell out thousands more to fix a different problem. Can't say I blame them. I didn't have a job, and all my disability checks were hitting FanDuel faster than any real bill I had. I got to the point where I was banned from Foxwoods for not paying back my debt. It took me realizing that I would be out of money the same week that my check came in that maybe it was time to find a job. That was also a problem. Personality wise, I didn't want to hump a desk 9 to 5, but most other jobs require me to stand for hours at a time, which is terrible on my hip. Next best chance, next to Indeed, was Craigslist. I ignored all the ones that were asking for hitman services. Those were all police plants wanting to nab a spouse, wanting to whack their significant other. There were a couple of security ads, and I stumbled on this one. Security needed for boat voyage. Ex-service members only. Pays cash. Seemed simple enough. The description was even more convincing. Easy money and a one-time gig. Pays handsomely. Looking for people willing to spend up to 3 weeks offshore. Once complete, you will be paid and communications will cease. At this point, I saw no red flags. Well, no red flags that turned me off. I like the tone of this writer. It's and this narrator. It's it's got some humor to it, which I always appreciate. And I like the whole like I'm kind of maybe not a scumbag, but like, I'm kind of a messy guy, so I wanted kind of a messy, under the table job sort of thing. I like that vibe. Very, very fun. Well, no red flags that turned me off. It was a mysterious person online, and for all I knew, I was signing up for gladiator fights on a cruise, but I had no money in either my checking or savings account, so I was beyond desperate. And for nothing else, I would feel like I was contributing. I emailed an inquiry, something simple, how much? The reply was quick and from a clear burner email address. The random assortment of letters and numbers, 2,000 per day, food and other supplies will be provided. Any other questions? I emailed back, what is the job? The reply was quick and unnerving. I see you are from New Haven, Connecticut region. I can meet you at the pizzeria on State Street if you're interested. My heart sank at the knowledge of my address. I'm sure it was light work for a commuter guy to trace an IP. Oh yeah, I'm sure it was light work for a computer guy to trace an IP. But in no way did I feel any better. However, my math skills dulled my anxiety. 2K a day, 2,000 per day is a lot. I mean, I would expect this job as illegal. Well, at the very least. $2K a day meant at most I was looking at $28K, a nice nest egg to be back on my feet, maybe help me get a long-term job. I simply replied, I'm interested. The pizzeria was crowded. I had 2 slices and a Coke. I focused on the parking lot. I wanted to see if I could spot the mystery man. That's gonna get cold, said the man who sat across from me. He had a narrow face. His glasses rested on the bridge of his nose. He wore a Yale Street in jeans, looking almost too casual for this. Come on. You've been watching the parking lot like a hawk, and you didn't even touch your pizza, the man said. I shrugged and took a pizza. There was still some heat in there. The man tapped his fingers. Yeah? I said with a mouthful of pizza. You emailed me, remember? Thought you wanted details. I swallowed and moved my plate aside. The man adjusted in his seat. My employer is looking for former servicemen. I can assume you are one? Marines, the man nodded. I felt him studying me like this interaction was a trial run. I leaned back and relaxed my shoulders. Good. Job is simple. There is a charter based out of California. It leaves in 2 days. Flight and the 2-day stay at a hotel will be covered. Firearms will be provided for you. Firearms, huh? You don't think we're selecting veterans for modeling, did you? I smirked. Is this offensive or defensive? You and the others will be doing basic security. Just need to be careful of the cargo. What are we moving? Nothing of your concern. In fact, that's a perfect segue into the 3 main rules. I took a sip of my Coke. Let's hear them. 1. No names. Pick a call sign before you fly out. 2. No questions. If my employer or any of his delegate tells you to do something, you jump to it. And the final one is the difficult one. I waved him on. The pizza was calling my name. Should the ship sink or in any way fall into peril, you will not issue any form of SOS or Mayday. There it was, the catch. No rescue, success, or death. Not quite the best option, but $28K was a lot of money for someone with none. Okay, I'm in. The man shook his head. Your driver's license, please? Excuse me? Come on, the no names is for you guys. I need to verify if you fit our criteria. Can you do that in 2 days? It won't take us 2 hours, the man winked. I scoffed, took out my wallet, removed the license, and slid it across the table. The man looked and took a picture of it with his phone, and handed it back. Good to meet you. You'll hear back soon. And I did. I went home, opened my laptop, and started to pace. After all, I had no money for rent, food, anything. If I got the job, I could negotiate with my landlord, keep my head afloat until I got something more consistent. 3 emails hit in rapid succession. The first was from a clear burner email. 4 words, you're in, pack light. The second was my bank, $1,000 deposited in my checking account. Final was from Expedia. My flight to Santa Barbara and Marriott stay were booked and paid for. For the first time in a while, I felt good. It lasted until I got into the car at Santa Barbara Airport. The flight was fine, barring some turbulence, but the car ride was unsettling. I was picked up by 2 big guys in suits. The bulges in their jacket were from shoulder holsters. They wore scarves to cover their faces. The worst part was that they were overly professional, opening the door, taking my bag. While my scary valet pulled away, I watched the city move out the window. While my scary valet pulled away, I watched the city move out the window. When I checked in, I was given a bag, said to have been left for me. When I opened it, there was a Visa gift card and a note. This will cover your food until you board. I spent the day mostly in bed. I ordered pizza around 8 just to have something. California pizza sucked, but I wanted something cheap that delivered. Payment went through fine. I grabbed a soda from the vending machine and enjoyed some YouTube while I ate cardboard pizza with flat Sprite. The next morning, I got the complimentary breakfast. As I looked for a seat, I was waved over. The guy was medium high but built. He was tan and had a surfer dude haircut. Thanks, I said. You here for the mystery gig? He said. What makes you say that? The guy laughed. He smacked the table, nearly spilling his tea. Come on, you got bags under your arm, built strong, and you flew on the same flight I did. I didn't see you, I said. I was incognito. He lifted his hands and enacted faux dodge. Faux dodges. I was incognito. Charger, he said, extending his hand. I forgot about the nickname, so I panicked. Ike. Charger nodded and went back to breakfast. As we ate, we discussed vaguely about ourselves. Charger was a SoCal native. He was a Marine Scout sniper for a few years and found the lack of work that matched that excitement. He took this job because it seemed fun. Can't say I didn't agree. The only negative to Charger was his nickname. He chose it because of his favorite football team. As a Chiefs fan, it was hard for me to associate with a fan of a division rival. But hey, at least he wasn't a Raiders fan. So did you hear any of the rumors? Asked Charger. No. I haven't spoken about this aside from you and the guy who hired me. Charger downed his tea. His gulps rang out like church bells. From what I heard, this guy's some big shot in the pharmaceutical world. Got caught up in some experimental shit. Oh, maybe we're protecting some rare earth metal being shipped overseas. Charger shrugged. I sipped my coffee. There was a nagging voice in my head telling me to finish breakfast, get an Uber, and promptly fuck off. I had that grand from Glasses Man. I could swing it, fly back to New England, and maybe try a desk job. But my curiosity and determination outweighed any fear. After breakfast, I went to my room and found another envelope. It had my name and full address on it. I opened it. It was a contract. It was an NDA and the 3 rules listed on each requiring an initial. I will under no circumstances radio a Mayday or SOS was seared into my mind. I signed it. Selling your soul was easier than one might think. On the back of the envelope, I was told to put the contract inside and hand it to my driver. At 2:30, we were checked out. The car took Charger and me from the hotel to the port of Koname. The ride was quick. There wasn't enough time to think or second guess ourselves. When I stepped out of the car, my eyes were on the USS Alaskan. It was a tanker ship about 600 feet long. What caught my eye was a huge metal structure about 50 feet tall and wide. I chalked it up to specialty cargo, but it was strange. Most cargo ships utilized hull space. This seemed to be for a different purpose. 3-week sausage party? Hope someone brought Vaseline, whispered Charger to me. I smirked, but I doubted anyone wanted action on the 7 Seas. His joke snapped me out of my questions. I reminded myself about the 28K and how I wasn't supposed to ask questions. There was about 12 of us. We checked in with our call sign and boarded. On deck, there was a group of men in polos and trousers. Most of them were in khaki shorts, graphic tees, and the occasional ball cap. One guy was wearing a Pink Floyd shirt, which I appreciated. Another was wearing a shirt with Dante from Clerks saying, "I'm not even supposed to be here today." I couldn't talk shit. I was wearing an old Alex Smith jersey and camo shorts. A tall man with the thin gray hair walked past the better dressed men and turned a face. He was slightly underweight and his skin wrinkled. He stood hunched. He cleared his throat. "Greetings, gentlemen. For the sake of personal anonymity, call me Dr. Purple. This is my charter, my vessel. Now, we have received your signatures and NDAs. Henceforth, nothing on this ship happened. Your duties here are to ensure the safety of myself and my team over the next 3 weeks or so. As discussed before, each day will ensure you a lump sum. If any issues arise, my number 2, Mr. Nantucket, will see to your needs." He stepped aside, and Mr. Nantucket, a built man with bright red hair, stood forward. "I'll show you around." We followed him inside. He showed us the stairs to the bridge. In terms of active patrol, we were expected to rotate in 12-hour shifts. When not on, we could use the recreational room. There was a foosball table, a dartboard, and various board games next to the barracks. Near the barracks and the hole were weapons cases. Rifles and ammo were stashed there. Food was at 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and 8 p.m., with a few vending machines around. All seemed fine. Along with Charger, I made friends with the two others we bunked with, Jules and a young black man from Jersey City. From Jersey City, and Poacher, a Hispanic guy from Chicago. Jules was in the National Guard, but this was a chance for extra money. Poacher was ex-Special Forces. He didn't elaborate on which unit he was in. No one asked. The first couple of days were simple. Jules and Poacher took the mornings. Charger and I took nights. We usually stood topside and watched the water. By the end of the first night, we were miles from shore. There was no one left to save us. Night on the Alaska dawn was peacefully terrifying. There was no light on the water once the clouds were down. Aside from the overhead lights, there was nothing to be seen. Charger and I were on deck patrol. There was always a moment mid-patrol where we stopped and just looked into the void. Between the black sky and the dark sea, usually this was when Charger would strike up a cigarette. "Who do you favor this season?" he asked. "Chiefs, duh." I mean, yeah, but after that Super Bowl. Don't fucking go there, Bolt boy. I took a beat to laugh, but in that silence we realized something. The engines were cut. We stood and listened. There was no commotion. We willingly stopped. It was 3 days of travel, and now we were at a standstill. From this height, we could still hear the waves splashing against the side of the ship. "I don't like this," I said. "Yeah." The rest of the night was uneventful. as was the night after that. I don't remember what day it was when Jules woke me up around 11. What? I snapped. Sorry, Ike. We need you in charge or on deck. 2 of our morning crew are sick. I rolled out of bed and didn't bother to fix my hair. I smacked Charger's arm, which dangled over my bunk. Thankfully, lunch was in an hour, so I could grab some grub before pulling a double shift. Make sure those assholes know they owe us one, I said. Jules waved me off as he went topside. I headed to the bridge to check the cameras. While it was part of my job, I never got to see the whole during the day, especially what was going on in the big box. The main camera guy was Bobcat. He was a good old boy from Arkansas, spoke with a twang to boot. Morning, Ike. Taking over for the 2 sickos? Said Bobcat. Yeah, coffee up here any good? You know, we ain't supposed to ask no questions. I thought that only applied to Dr. Purple's people eaters. He chortled at that. I know, I'm fucking with you, Ike. I poured myself a coffee and drank it black. I peered over the camera and saw a glass box. Dr. Purple and 2 assistants were in the box. They were doing electrical work on something. All I saw were sparks. The camera wasn't great. They synthesizing something? Bobcat said. He leaned back in his chair, allowing me a better view. Eventually, the white fuzzy silhouettes of Purple and Co. moved, and there lay a thin body. The thing was still. I couldn't see any discernible features. I'd have written the thing off if I couldn't see it breathing. Holy shit, Bob, you seeing this? I asked. Seeing what? I watched as the little nubs start to sprout. I couldn't hear a thing, but it was clear it was struggling. The top of the thing began to pop and grow. The head extended into becoming a lizard-like skull structure. Flesh ripped away as it went from blank to developed. A long tongue slid out, circled the air. My heart raced. Pharmaceutical, my ass. This was some John Hammond experimentation. No laws on genetic testing in international waters. We weren't protection, we were containment. The animal grew legs quick. They were thick. The arms were still small, like what a T-Rex arms would look like. The head smashed into the glass. Then again. I couldn't see it, but the thing cracked the glass. The force smash caused the glass to shatter and collapse. My heart raced as the thing stepped out of the container. It beat so hard I could feel it in my ears. An alarm blared. Lights flashed in the hull. Containment breach! Containment breach! The screams carried across the ship. Bobcat and I stared in disbelief. Help me find the door seals, he said. We frantically searched the patrol panel. As we looked, the cameras picked up on the thing moving down a corridor. We heard gunshots and the screams. I finally found it and turned the key. The echo of doors closing and the hull rung out. I fell to the ground to catch my breath. What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? Yelled Bobcat. I don't know. We made our way down. Dr. Purple was MIA. Nantucket was around the survivors. 3 of our security guys were gone. Poacher clutched his arm. I didn't have to get close to see that it was gone below the bicep. I need everyone to calm down, said Nantucket, his New England accent bleeding through. Fuck that. What is that? Yelled Poacher. He winced. That thing was simply procedural. You have nothing to worry about. Bullshit, someone yelled. Fuck that, yelled another. Nantucket was sweating. He probably didn't know what he'd gotten himself into. We locked the door, said Bobcat. The hole seals? Asked Nantucket. He nodded. I stood behind and watched. Nantucket rubbed his stubble. He took a deep breath. Okay, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we need to isolate the thing and make sure it's dead. It's sealed off, ain't that enough? Chimed Jules. No, I don't know. He walked over to the railing and hurled. He sighed and came back. Right now, Dr. Purple is the only one MIA. If you want to go back for the bodies of the dead, I won't stop you. The hole is sealed off, but I don't know if that will hold. Commotion and debate arose among the survivors. Do we have walkies? I finally said. Nantucket and the others looked at me. A few, mainly for scientists, but what's up? He asked. Give me one. Take a few guys and see what we can do about this thing. Bobcat will take one and be our eyes in the hole. Okay, said Nantucket. I'll take one too, said Charger. He stood up. Let's get you boys armed, said Nantucket. I took the lead. Along with me were Charger, Jules, and two other grunts I knew. Fraser and Dante, who still wore his clerk shirt. It would be enough of a ragtag group to hopefully stop this madness. Nantucket opened the locker. There were 3 radios. I took one. So did Charger. We each took a Daniel Defense AR and 10-round magazines. Fucking California compliance. That's funny. Illegal experiments at sea were fine, but God forbid we piss off the ATF. We each took 4 mags each. At least carrying 10 rounds was easier than carrying 30-round mags. I took a Sig Sauer as a sidearm. If I were getting mauled, I was going down swinging. Nantucket passed out flashlight. Good luck, he said. Whoever bags it gets a bonus, right? Ask me, you get bonuses for going down there, said Nantucket. He turned and walked up the stairs. I held the rifle close and waited for Bobcat to chime in. With the static and crack, I heard him. All right, I'm in. I raised my thumb up to the camera. Can you see me? Hey, Ike. I took a deep breath. This was just another patrol, that's all. I swung open the door and we started walking through. We turned the flashlights on and started our way down the hall. Aye, guys, behind you! I turned around. Crawling from the roof and wrapping around the door was the thing. In 20 minutes, it had grown from about 2 feet long, 5 feet tall. It had full arms and could climb. Its pale skin was now steel gray. It could camouflage. I mean, is this thing just basically Predator? I mean, not to be like, but now it can camouflage. It grew really fast, which I don't know if Predator grows really fast, but I mean, I'm assuming it has to be an alien, right? Like, it just seems like mostly alien, but maybe not. It could camouflage. It raised our rifles and fired. It was deafening. The beast slid down and We raised our rifles and fired. It was deafening. The beast slid down and Fraser by his ankle. The beast slid down and grabbed. Maybe they're supposed to be grabbed Fraser by his ankle. Yeah, I'm guessing that's what it is. Little typo here, no big deal. He yanked him down with such force that his leg popped clean off. He screamed. It was more deafening than the rifle shots. The thing lifted its head and burrowed its jaws into the man's chest. Charger fired at the thing's skull. It only stopped when a round struck it in the eye. It bled from where its eyes used to be. It didn't roar or react. Instead, it grabbed the carcass with its free hand and scurried into the darkness. "Anyone else hurt?" asked Charger. I dropped my magazine and reloaded. "I'm good," said Jules. "Me too," said the other. I took a deep breath. We turned on our flashlights and held them close. The only way to the beast was to keep going. As we reached the end of the hall, the fluorescent lights nearly blinded us when we got in. This was the big box. The sides were reinforced with titanium. The glass cage was shattered. Blood streaked across the floor. One of the scientists lay decapitated, his head nastily bitten off. The whole area reeked of rotting flesh. We searched high and low. Glass shattered under our boots. "Holy shit," yelled Jules. We rushed his position. He found a biohazard bin. Inside were easily a dozen, probably more of the base. The white thin object was meant to become the specimen. At the top were the ones that got closest. Some had half-formed faces, others limbs. One had half a leg. They all stunk of decay. "I'm gonna be sick," said Charger. He found an empty bin and hurled. So I'm guessing they found like alien eggs or something like that is kind of what it's saying. The sound of metal crunching came from one of his side halls. "Jules, with me. You two stay and see if anyone else here survived." I took the lead. Jules was close behind. "I should have never taken this job," he said. His hands were shaking. "Neither should I said with a smile. It was fake. My nerves were fired and my hip was hurting. I had to fight through. Can't take charge and crap out. I stopped in front of what seemed like the tail. That thing grew quick. It wasn't even an hour, and it had an additional limb. I looked up to trace the beast, see if I could see underneath it. That's when it shook and pulled up. That wasn't a tail. That was its arm. The top floor of the deck was collapsing. "Go, go, go, go," I yelled as Jules didn't take much convincing. We turned around as the deck above us came tumbling down. The door felt like miles away. I dove, losing my rifle, but landed. I turned expecting Jules right behind me, but he wasn't. "Mike, I'm almost there." I watched him jump forward. I reached out to grab him, our arms locked fast and firm. That was when 4 long gray claws came from the darkness and snatched his torso. He screamed and blood squirted from his mouth with a crunch. All we knew, we all knew his ribs were broken. I dropped to the ground with his arm in mine. Charger grabbed his arms and Dante fired into the darkness. "Please don't let me die like that," Jules groaned. "I won't, kid. Hang on," I said. A single gunshot rang out, causing Charger and me to drop him. In a split second, we only saw where the bullet went into Jules's head. Oh shit. Causing Charger and me to drop him. And in that split second, we only saw where the bullet went into Jules's head. The beast roared and dragged Jules into the depths of the boat. Behind us was Dr. Purple with my Sig Sauer in his hand. Dr. Purple shot him. piece of shit, I yelled. Charger didn't hesitate. He shot the doctor in the stomach. The doctor fell to the ground. I grabbed the handgun off the floor and tucked it in my waistband. Do you know what you have done? Choked the doctor. I don't give a fuck, said Charger. He walked away. What is that thing? I asked. The doctor shook his head. You killed me. That means no payment for any of you. That man was a goner. Once he had the claws, he was dead. Man, he was 19. Doctor said nothing. I dropped my boot on his knee. He recoiled in pain. I got in close. What is that thing? It's a success. That's what it is. I pressed down hard. No games. What the fuck is that? It's an amalgamation. I wanted to see how certain DNAs interacted and what they formed. This one seemed to be the most compatible. Don't meow at me, I'm reading the story. This one seemed to be the most compatible. What DNA? Doesn't matter. I'm dead anyway. I punched the wound. He jolted and spat blood. Come on then. I punched the wound. He jolted and spat blood. Takes a long time to bleed out from a gunshot, Doc. He shook his head. His lips were already drying out. The base is monitor lizard. Then we started adding various species of venomous fish like cuttlefish, squid, even tried whale. The fuck is in that one? I asked, less curious and more panicked. Monitor, Humboldt squid, cuttlefish, rhinoceros, sperm whale, and human. What, human DNA in there? Had plenty of it, said with a sickening grin. Read the story, Stella. Gotta read it. Help me read? Oh, okay. You put human DNA in there? Had plenty of it, he said with a sickening grin, and I realized something. Part whale could hear us. The loud bang, the ship shook. The thing was still growing. It was trying to kill everything on board. Let's move, I said. What about him? Asked Dante. I watched as the creature's back broke through the floor. Its ugly regrown eye, which was still covered by a thin layer of skin, peered from the crack. Leave him. No one argued as we turned around and left the lab. Dr. Purple's scream followed us until a loud squelch silenced him. I radioed Bobcat down, and we got topside. Few survivors stood in a semicircle. Poacher died. White foam poured from his agape mouth. The toxins from the beast infected the wound, killed him quickly. There weren't many of us left. Killing this thing was the only option. Charger explained the situation as best he could. Once he was done, Nantucket pulled me aside. If you said it's true, sinking the ship might be our best bet. Are you fucking crazy? Sink the ship? We have lifeboats. We can escape, get far enough away and send out the SOS. So much for no SOS clause. Leonard Purple is dead. There is no sense in preserving this. The slip was fatal. Leonard had to be Dr. Curtis Leonard. Leonard Purple is dead. Dr. Curtis Leonard from Johns Hopkins. I didn't read much science stuff, but he made a big name for himself during the pandemic, mainly for his work in rDNA vaccines. He understood the science well, Of course, 3 years after the pandemic and dozens of conspiracy theories later, he was kicked out of Hopkins and practically blacklisted for injecting cancer patients with lobster DNA to see how it would help treatment. Spoiler alert, it made them sick. Medical genius or mad scientist didn't seem that far apart. How did you end up here, working for him, I asked. Nantucket smirked. Opioid addiction makes you do crazy things. I needed money for pills or rehab, which seems right after this. Makes you feel any better? I took it to fix my gambling debts. Well, I hope we make it to enjoy healthier lifestyles. I nodded. Nantucket took a deep breath and walked in front of the survivors. Okay, here's the plan. Ike Charger, I will go to the engine room. We'll overcharge the engine and detonate the ship. That will cause the ship to sink fast, cause a vortex. The thing will likely be unable to escape the ship when that happens. Bro, it has whale DNA in it. You don't think it can fucking swim? Dr. Anastasia will lead the rest of you to the lifeboats. Each of you will take a walkie so we can communicate. From there, we'll deploy the SOS. Everyone nodded. Everyone understood. 3 of us went down to the catacombs of the Alaskan dawn. I mean, this is just a fun creature feature. Right now, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I wouldn't say it's particularly scary, but it is like a fun, monster, whatever. And I do appreciate that it's from like the soldier's perspective, and it's not like trying to go too deep into the science, like. Because ultimately, in a monster movie or a creature feature like that, it's like we just want to see the monster kill people, and so far we've gotten to see that, so I'm into it. I mean, it's a lot of fun. We kept the flashlights on. There were no lights down there. The hallways felt tight. The foul stench of abomination whiffed through the halls. It got to the point where Nantucket covered his mouth with a cloth. The metal creaked, then snapped. A large column slammed around them. It was the thing's leg. I looked up the hole and saw the torso. The tail went down the entire hallway. Run, I said. Our steps began to echo, and that's when the beast turned around above us. The metal churned as it lifted its leg and maneuvered its way behind us. As we sprinted, it gained on us. The rot from its breath stained the back of our shirts. Its jaws snapped at them. Stopping to shoot wasn't an option. We're almost there. See, okay. This is one thing I'll say. This has happened twice now, where the one guy, Jules, yelled like, "I'm almost there, Ike," and now Nantucket's yelling it, and I'm like, I feel like no one would not pause, but even while they were running would yell, "I'm almost there," like, that just seems a little silly to me, but anyways. I thought we were far enough from the snapping jaws. Eventually, it got one of us, Charger. His death was quick, one snap, and he folded in half. It was down the beast's throat before I could react. Nantucket held the door so I could get in and then slammed it. The beast rammed the door, but it could not break it down. As I gasped for air, I heard it retreat. Nantucket had the plan. He started opening the valves and letting gas out. Ike, you should go, he said flatly. What? Why? I asked. Only one of us needs to be here for this to go off, and his voice trailed off. He took a deep breath. Before I took this job, I was in jail, held because I accidentally ran my son over. Oh my god. Held because I accidentally ran my son over while I was high. He'll never walk again because of my actions. I don't deserve a second chance. If you get out, you deserve one. Good luck. I mean, that's like touching in a horrible sort of way. You're like, he's like, I already fucked my life up. You deserve the second chance. Go. Um, but also, like, I think that's a little. I don't know. I almost wonder if the author could have found a little bit of way to be like, he's like, I knew what I was getting myself into. Like, I knew there's a chance these experiments could go bad. Like, you know, you got tricked into this, sort of thing. Like, I felt like you could have done something like that and it could have just been easily as like touching, but to have him be like, I know he said the thing earlier about how he was an opiate addict, but like, have it just be so like, I paralyzed my son. I don't deserve a second chance. Like, yeah, I'm just kind of like, God damn. I mean, I guess it's fine, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, does this is the story made better by that? I don't know. I think you could have still had a moment where he's like, "Go save yourself." I don't deserve this. I knew that. Whatever. I was in charge, and I was in charge of security, and I failed or something, like just something simple like that. I said nothing in argument. I patted him on the back and walked out. I heard the door slam behind me, and I started to ascend from the depths. I found a lifeboat and boarded it solo. The others were already in the water. Floating nearby, I managed to start the boat up and head out. Ike, you okay? Asked Bobcat. Copy, Bobcat. From our lifeboats, we saw the top of the Alaskan dawn peel back. The beast burst out of the top of the ship. Its upper body was huge. The thickness of its body showed, and its skin was a light bluish gray color. One eye was black, and the one Charger shot out, was yellow. One arm snuck out of the hole and snaked like a tentacle. Grabbed the other lifeboat and squeezed tight. The windows blew out. I heard gunfire come from the boat as it was lifted. But then the explosion erupted. Fire came out of the rear of the ship. I ducked as shrapnel ripped across the ocean. Metal ripped through the top of my lifeboat. The Alaska Dawn started to capsize. Within a minute, the ship, the beast, the survivors were underwater. Nantucket was right. The vortex was almost instant. Was what? The vortex almost instantly. There's a typo here, but the vortex almost instantly and pulled everything underwater. When the ocean was still, I started attempting an SOS. I was out on the ocean for at least a week. I took a Japanese fishing. It took a Japanese fishing ship to find me. They brought me back to the country. It took about 2 months to recover, but thank God for the Japanese healthcare system being free. My doctor, Tsunemo Miyamoto, Sunio, told me that if I had been out there for another day, I likely wouldn't have been able to be saved. While I recovered, A Navy master at arms came to my room and gave me a light interrogation as to what the hell I was doing on a lifeboat alone in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I lied. I don't even remember if my lie was convincing. Truth is, I don't know what Leonard's plan was. For all I know, it could have been a government contract. All I knew was whatever the science was, it was best left at the bottom of the ocean. I used my downtime at the hospital to look for jobs in Japan. English teaching jobs were the only thing I was good enough for. Thankfully, the USD could be stretched further in Japan than my home country. I hope to start a new life here, but I am haunted by one thing in the back of my mind. The beast, that thing, had whale DNA in it. It could still be alive. Yeah, no shit, bro. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Of course it could still be alive is kind of my main point. Uh and the fact that like they didn't even see it like blow up. Like if it was in the explosion, or something, it could have been a little bit better, but it's and I guess maybe there was a little bit of that, but yeah, I mean that's a fun ending. I think you want the monster to survive anyways, so that story, it's fun. I do think there was a little I was a little bit confused about some of the like descriptions of like the size of it, and like it like says they're running down a hallway and then it's like a pillar struck through the hallway. It was its leg, and I was like, is it like coming from the ceiling? Is that what it meant? Or did it like come from the side? Like I don't know. So there was just a few moments like that I wish that they spent a little bit more time like, and I understand the creature was growing and changing rapidly, and I thought that part's kind of cool, but there was also just some things where I was like, I wish there was like a moment where they could have explained it a little bit more, or maybe like he would have went back to the camera guy, to whatever his name was, uh Bobcat, yeah, he would have like, and they would have like seen it another time on the camera or something like, and they just, I think the story could have taken a little bit more time to like describe the monster and describe. It sounds like it has a lot of really cool powers like camouflaging and growing, and the tail, and maybe its eye was healing too. So it's like I would have liked to maybe have just see the monster a little bit more, and not like that they had to completely describe it in great detail, or that it had to like them know exactly, oh it looks like this, but I was just a little confused about like the size of it at certain times and stuff. I'm like, is it so big that it's just like tearing through the ship like a giant like dinosaur juggernaut thing, or is it like um is it, can it still run down a hallway, like even a ship hallway with like high ceilings or something? Is it, I was just a little confused about like the size of it, but all in all, a fun story, and like I appreciate a good creature feature flick, and I liked the comedic tone of this narrator and the writer. I think they have a good like attention to the tone, I and like a fun perspective, right? Because ultimately, like this wasn't a story about like a scientist creating some creature. It's just a guy who got caught up and had a huge payday dangled in front of his face, so then he just got in over his head, and um yeah, and so like ultimately I just like how the story kind of went there quickly, and there's a little bit of mystique and stuff, but it was like basically as soon as they were on day shift and they were there for like this whole monster basically coming alive, and so um And in that part, it happened kind of fast. Like, I wondered if the pacing could have been a little bit slower from they're just like, the monster's coming a lot. Oh, crap, it's escaping. Ah. But at that point, too, I was also like, well, the story has been going on for a while. So I get, like, they want to get to the monster. So I get that. I just maybe if, like, in some of those days on the shift before they see the monster wake up, if they maybe could have, like, heard some scientists talking about, like, their other failed eggs, or failed experiments before that, like just to like kind of tease it out a little bit more, I think could have been fun for the story. But all in all, it's just a fun creature. Uh, it's discovered or born. In this case, it was created. Creature gets created and it starts to fucking kill people, and that's fun. And the story delivers on that. The story knows what it is. It does it well. It's fun. It yeah, it's one of those things where, like, it doesn't need to be any crazier, but it is like a cool creature design, and I like that it just wasn't like an alien or something else, but it was like, this one crazy mad scientist created this thing with human and whatever else fucked up DNA. And that's fun, right? We've seen it in Jurassic Park, and stuff like that, where they talk about, splicing different animals together and stuff. And ultimately it makes it fun. And yeah, I enjoy like, you know it is horror, but it's like military Jurassic Park style horror, and that's just a lot of fun, right? And for a written story, I think it did a good job of creating some tension, creating like some stakes that kind of made you, if not like totally like I wasn't really sad when anyone died, but I wasn't completely like, well, just fuck it, I wasn't like I want to see all these characters die. Once I learned about Nantucket, I did I guess I am the thing I wanted to say is that I would have liked to have seen him get killed by the monster and not just blow up the thing. I think that could have been kind of fun, especially since we know he was like such a scumbag who paralyzed his son because he was high on fent or whatever. Like, um, I think you could have maybe gotten like a few more fun kills in there, but like ultimately, I mean, everyone but our narrator died, so we can assume that whatever, that everyone got their comeuppance. But um, yeah, I think maybe the kills could have been slightly more creative too. With some parts, it just seemed like it was a lot of like grabbing and decapitating or like whatever. Like maybe the creature could have like ate them in some weird crazy way, um because of these different animals. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some crazy way a whale eats animals, or this monitor lizard thing. Like, yeah, maybe there's just some other, like maybe it could have spit acid onto their skin and then like, like ate their skin off, or just something else kind of cool that's like a striking visual might have been kind of fun. But all in all, it was a fun story. It was a fun read, and I like a good creature feature. I like a good creepy monster that just kills the fuck out of a bunch of people. I have a lot of fun with that. I don't see anything wrong with that. So, cool story. I like it. Mike is sometimes right. Kudos to you. Fun read, fun tone. I thought the story had a good humor to it. I thought our narrator had a good kind of like laissez faire, whatever. Uh, cat like just kind of like cavalier, fun attitude where it's like, I didn't notice any red flags. Well, I didn't notice any red flags. I wasn't afraid of, or whatever he said, like, in that, like, it's just little lines like that that take a what is otherwise just kind of a basic uh monster escapes and kills people and just makes it a little bit more fun, and I appreciate that. I think it shows a higher caliber of writing when your narrator has a personality like that, and it translates through, and it makes them likable too. So it's like, it makes the story a lot more fun, and it makes those earlier parts flow and just make you want to get to the meat of the story that much more. So yeah, I appreciate it. Is a fun read for sure. All right, well, now we have it started with the smell, but first I got to go pee, so please enjoy some of this.
A horror film, but they also wanted to just kind of do the plot of Willy's Wonderland. Is kind of the idea. It's the worst movie I've seen this year, I'll say that. It's not the worst movie ever. We're not going to go that far, but it is by far the worst movie this year, which this year has been stacked. Right, Nick?
Oh, yeah.
This is one of the worst horror films I've personally ever seen. This, unironically, might be one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
It's also one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
This year has been fucking stacked. I mean, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, the Paul Bunyan horror film, Children of the Corn remake. Holy shit. The Little Mermaid. I would honestly say that the AI-generated Little Mermaid movie was more enjoyable than this. But without further ado, obviously spoiler warnings in case any of you are deranged enough to put this on during your holiday festivities. Don't want to ruin this one for you. But without further ado, I had to watch it, so now you have to listen about it. Let's chat about the mean one. Okay. This movie starts off, and throughout the whole movie, there's like a narrator, which I'm pretty sure they're taking that from the cartoon. Well, I guess it's also in the Jim Carrey Grinch movie too, right? There's a narrator the whole time. It's in this context, it doesn't work at all. It's always kind of random, and you're like, oh shit, why the fuck are we doing that? But I digress, whatever. It starts off, and we get the classic scene of Sydney Lou Who, but in this movie, they call it Sydney You Know Who.
Remember that story about Cindy You Know Who?
And you're like, okay, I immediately know what kind of fucking movie this is gonna be. As soon as they start introducing, like, I mean, it's the name, but it's slightly different, okay? So it's like trying to be cute. And that's another thing with this movie, before I go too much into it, is I don't know how intentional the comedy's supposed to be. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, it's like, obviously they're trying to treat it as serious as they can with a horror movie, and it feels like they're doing that here too, but there's so many intentional, haha, this is supposed to be cute funny, that I didn't know if, like, oh, are other parts of this movie supposed to be a comedy or a horror? I don't know, but it was bad. It wasn't funny and it wasn't scary, so I don't know. So it starts off with Sydney meeting the Grinch at the beginning, and they kind of establish that this is going to be a different version of the classic tale. It starts off with Sydney giving the Grinch or as she calls him, Santa, like a Santa Claus necklace, and his heart grew 3 sizes too big. But time stops, and then the narrator's like, well, that's probably the story you remember, but it's actually far darker.
But what if I said that's not how it went down?
And we get a nice cut of the mom immediately coming in and just being like, Sydney, watch out, that's a monster! The mom and the Grinch get into a scuffle, a scaff as you were. The mom trips, falls onto a spike. The actress they had for Sydney lets out a very monotone, monster!
Monster! Monster! Monster!
That's the beginning of our movie. Until we cut to the future, apparently, and Sydney and her dad are driving back to town to just enjoy the holiday season, even though it's like your mom was grisly murdered during the holiday. It's very odd. And we get a lot of weird dynamics between Sydney and her dad. I mean, he's like really, really over the top, and there is a funny line where as they're driving up, Sydney and her dad are singing, and like they're laughing because they finished a song, because apparently that's funny. And she lets out a sigh, and the dad immediately says, are you okay? Because I can turn around right now.
You're gonna be okay? Because we can turn around right now.
Which, don't really know what elicited that response, but she's like, nah, it's fine, it's whatever. And then this is where we start getting, okay, now we're getting into extremely schlocky, low budget, new, like, bad director kind of filmmaker vibes, when there's some shots that are snowy, and then there's some shots that are like, this is just Southern California or Northern California. I want to say that their home is probably in Northern California. That's kind of what it feels like. But while they're driving, they get pulled over by a cop who is absolutely rock hard hard for Sydney. He is flustered. He's like, what's your name? And she's like, oh God, Dad. And the dad's like, I wish you would get in here and fuck my daughter. Would you climb through this window and fuck my daughter? She's like, Dad. She looks at the cop and she's like, if I skinned my dad alive and cut off his cock and killed him and shot him in the back of the head, would you help me with that? And he's like, well, I'm sorry, I gotta go. And the cop just leaves. We started to notice that during this interaction, the movie is like extremely quiet.
I'm Cindy.
Abnormally quiet. Like there's no real score behind it. There's no sound effects. No, like let's take this right here. If you had this be absolutely quiet, it wouldn't feel like a live room. Versus if I wanted to make it feel more cinematic, I might put in room noise like this. And now it feels kind of like a full space. It doesn't feel like I'm just.
All right. So last but not least, we have It Started With a Smash. So like I said, I'm getting strong deja vu that maybe I have read this story before, but we're just going to go ahead and get into it, and then whatever. I'll read it twice if I have read it before, but it's only 1 month old, so I don't think I have, but maybe it's the name or something. Maybe there was a name of another story that was something about a smell that's like throwing me off. All right. Let's do it. I decided at the beginning of the year, about 8 months ago, to finally commit to something I've been thinking about for a long time. I wanted nothing more than to drop everything and travel on my own. Have you ever seen Into the Wild? That kind of thing. I wanted freedom, just to experience the open road, wilderness, and all the small towns America has to offer. I had been saving up plenty of money from living in a cheap apartment and working a dead-end landscaping job. I want to say right off the bat, I completely agree with this sentiment. I want to travel outside of the country too, but one of my dreams or what is just to like spend a year just whether it's hitchhiking or whether it's just driving around I would love to do that, I think that, just the United States is so weird, man, and has like so many little crevices and adventures that to me, I'm always jealous of like when people are like, yeah, we're going on a road trip, even if it's just like a week or 2 weeks, I'm like, do it, man. That sounds awesome, Yeah, it sucks when you're like trying to drive really far and there's not time to stop, but if you've got like the best type of trips especially are like where you've got time but no destination like that, I'm in, dude. That sounds so much fun. Anyways. I figured I could squeak out a good year or so with the savings I had. I just need to pay for gas, food, and my phone/car payments. I figured I could leech off public spaces for electricity and water as needed. Aside from the pains of moving out, quitting my job, and convincing my parents not to be worried about me, it was a really good experience at first. It was really freeing not to have to worry about any more schedules. Even the idea of not knowing where I'm going to sleep the next night has been fun in a way. Most nights I slept in my car, occasionally set up my tent in a nice secluded spot and stayed longer, a couple days, a week. One morning, while tented up somewhere in rural Mississippi along a riverbank surrounded by woods, I noticed something as I awoke, a bad smell. Like an overpowering scent of rotting onions, worn dumpsters, moldy food. The smell quickly woke me up, and I sat up in my hot sleeping bag, sweating under the layers of nylon fabric. The stench brought me to nausea, and I had no choice but to get out of my stuffy room. I unzipped the bag and briefly scanned the interior of the tent while holding my breath. Nothing seemed out of place. I clambered out of the tent in my underwear into the morning sun. I took a huge inhale of outside air. Filling my lungs with cool, purifying wind. The sickness I felt began to dissipate. After a moment of respite, when I felt restored, I attempted to solve the mystery. At first, I figured it could be some food that had gone bad. However, after further inspection, I realized I had left all my food either in my car or in a cooler sitting outside the tent. I was left confused because I periodically crouched back into the tent to remove items while holding my breath. I found nothing strange or unusual at all. Eventually, I had removed every single item from the tent. My sleeping bag, backpack, water bottle, suitcase of clothes, bug spray, first aid kit, lantern, and all the other knickknacks and memories of old towns I had passed by. Sticking my head through the main flap of the tent, I found that the smell had grown even more intense, and the small whiff I gathered in my nose left me reeling, nearly vomiting. It was disgusting, like a pig had wrapped its mouth around my nose and exhaled into my nostrils. The air inside felt thick upon entering, significantly more humid than the outside climate. I pulled my head out as soon as it had first entered. After inspecting my water bottle for some trace of smell or grime, I cautiously drank from it to clear my throat of the coating of gunk I couldn't help but imagine entered my body from my nose. I closely inspected all my other items for the stench. None of them seemed off at all, with the only exception being, tragically, my suitcase of clothes. Although not strong, I could smell the familiar onion-like scent on the whole bag and all the clothes inside. Despite this, I knew I couldn't just travel in my underwear, so I begrudgingly clothed myself in something light. Figuring this must be some kind of divine sign, I decided to pack all my stuff and hit the road. I stayed in this camping spot for nearly a week up to this point, and I was eager to travel again. I carefully took down my tent, holding my breath the whole time. Once it was fully collapsed, it was time to fit it inside the bag. If you've ever had to roll up an old tent and fit it into a bag, you might know how tightly some fit, how little wiggle room there is for the error in the folding process of pushing out any remaining air inside the fabric in order for it to squeeze inside. This process is tedious, annoying, and unfortunately, it also involves some elbow grease. As I rolled up the tent, I pushed air out by sitting on it with my knee periodically while closing it further. Even though I held my breath, I could feel the hot air inside as it leaked out, a hot, decaying breath that crept its way across my limbs. As I was nearly done, due to the As I was nearly done, due to the arduous nature of the process, I instinctively inhaled through my nose out of my exhaustion, and I made the final press on the rolled up tent with my knees. The intensity of the hot air hitting the back of my throat, my lungs coating everything in some viscous, slimy air that stunk of rotten food and dead rodents. I couldn't stop myself from vomiting almost immediately. I doubled over on the dirt next to my supplies, hands on my knees, expelling stomach acid from my mouth, chunks of yesterday's food, and something else, too. Dark brown, yet nearly black bile spilled out of everything from my stomach. Once the herb subsided, I collapsed on the ground, clutching myself. Shakily, I stood up, witnessing the contents of my body exposed to the outside, all of it soaked into the dirt and grass. Luckily, none of it got on my gear. I carefully shoved the rolled tent into its bag, barely managing to jerk the zipper shut. I packed everything in my car and was out of the campsite by noon. I had carefully closed the tent and closed the tent into the separate trunk space, inaccessible from the car's interior, where the rest of my gear was haphazardly tossed. Over the next week or so, I searched for a new tent in stores off the interstate, but ultimately decided against it, as the cost of any new tents I found were beyond the scope of my bargain-minded brain. As an alternative to the tent, I slept every night only in my car with just a blanket. All my clothes had the lingering scent attached to them, while still reminiscent of the incident a week prior, were not so strong as to prevent me from wearing them. Still, I felt some small darkness, a cloud hanging over my head, in the form of a smell still attached to my body at all times. No matter how many times I cleaned them, the attachment remained. After some time traveling, I crossed the Mississippi River into Arkansas, where I found some nondescript rural town to stay in for a few days. The land was more dry here, less populated by both people and foliage alike. The densely packed woods I had once been in were now rockier, and exposed ground gave way to a thinner tree line and more open space. The town I found myself in must have been once supplied by an important arterial railroad, one whose blood has now run thin. The dusty closed storefronts scattered across the town were barren. Where I would have normally expected kudzu to bloom were instead these lifeless dead buildings, with the odd dilapidated home occasionally placed, still alive with aging men and women, people from a different time than I. After a day of exploring the town, I decided I wanted to try to camp again. I found an old drugstore where I resupplied some general items alongside a can of air freshener. The clerk at the store gave me some suggestions as to where I could camp in the area. He asked me why I was out there. After telling him a bit about my travels, he told me I shouldn't try to stay in town for too long, that this place was old, weary, not for my kind. I laughed it off and told him that's why I wanted to go out of town camping. He told me the woods were even worse for wear. I found the conversation to be nothing more than a local trying to scare off a tourist. I said my goodbyes to the man. Before I could walk away, he asked me if I was feeling alright. I told him I was fine and asked him why. glanced at my face like there was something wrong with me, looked down at the air freshener in my hand, and quickly said goodbye and got to his busy work behind the counter. As I made my way out of the store, something hit as soon as the sunlight hit my skin. I could smell it. Same rancid, decaying onion smell. The same rancid, decaying onion smell permeated into my nose, and the familiar light-headed queasiness took over my senses. I looked around but saw no clear source. I jogged to my car, parked alongside of the cracked, faded street. Turning on the engine, I cranked the AC up. I could smell the stench dissipate from my nose. Sighing with relief, I took off. I drove out of town for about 2 hours, following the general direction the clerk had given me, eventually finding myself along a lonely dirt road contained by tall, sparse, frowning woods. After becoming satisfied with the distance I had gone, I parked the car off to the side of a narrow path, just enough that another car could pass through if needed. The gear was heavy, but I was used to it. I carried everything either on my back in my right hand or on the cooler I was rolling along the gravelly dirt with the handle in my left hand. I stopped and set my gear down occasionally to take a break. Walking through a small clearing in the woods where the ground was hard and contained almost no foliage, I felt something warm begin to drip from my nose. I looked down and saw blood streaming out onto my shirt, bright red and alarming. I dropped my gear and pinched my nose shut. Well, this isn't so bad a place to set up camp, as I thought. I clumsily took out my first aid kit with one hand, while the other attempted to hold my nostrils shut, blood still leaking out onto my fingers and hand. I stuffed my nose with pieces of gauze to hold in the blood, giving it time to coagulate and settle. I pulled the pocket mirror out of my backpack and looked at my face. Bits of dried blood coated the skin surrounding my nostrils, the pinkish gauze held firmly in place. But I noticed something else too. A good portion of my nose, from the tip up to about 2/3 up the bridge, was turning gray. While still mostly tanned like the rest of my skin, it looked as though the whole area was bruised badly. I touched it lightly and felt nothing. While somewhat worrying, I decided to ignore it for the moment and set up camp. I could deal with this nosebleed in a few minutes. You can't feel your nose and you're having a nosebleed and you experience this awful smell, which by all appearances seems like it's coming from you, and now it seems like your nose is like dying on your face, and you're like, well, I better just set up camp so then I could deal with this nosebleed. The nosebleed to me is the least concerning part. Like, sure, like seeing it at first, you're like, oh fuck, but my immediate thought would be, I need to get out of this small ass town and into somewhere that has like a hospital, you know? And I get it, like, he's on his trip. I could see how maybe you're like, oh, well, maybe my nose is bleeding. Like, maybe I'm just not feeling it because like all the blood that poured out of it, so like maybe it just feels kind of numb or something. But the fact that it looks gray too and everything, like, and the disgusting smell that seemingly is coming from nothing except for you is not good, I I could deal with the nosebleed in a few minutes. When everything was pulled out, all I had left to do was set up the tent. I found the flattest portion of the clearing and cautiously unrolled the material. With my nose blocked up, I couldn't smell anything anyways. I was easily able to fully set up the tent in no time. When I returned to the nosebleed, I slowly dragged the gauze from each nostril, a long, dark red slug of coagulated blood trailing behind. I felt these worm pieces as they slithered out of place, falling onto the ground. As I felt the shiver down my spine, each one must have been about 4 or 5 inches. Luckily, the bleeding had stopped completely from each. I poured some water onto a rag and cleaned up my face. Upon glancing in the mirror, my nose, while cleaned of blood, was still a grayish-bluish hue. Gathering my courage and my air freshener, I inhaled for the first time into my nose again. I felt the intense stench envelop my head and I gagged. At this point, I'm like, bro, you gotta get to a hot... Your nose is dying on your face. You're dying. And he threw up, and he said he threw up some, like, black item or thing, and I don't know, he didn't really investigate it, but I'm like, clearly some creature, like, I don't know, a bug or something, like, hatched inside of you. There's something foul in you, dude. What the hell is going on? I'm not inside the tent. This isn't the outside of some old decaying street. This wilderness reeked of rot. I began sorely breathing through my mouth from then on. As it was already nearly sunset, it was too dark to try to tear down camp and return to the car. I decided to power through the night and leave in the morning. As I sat near the tent, I felt the encroachment of the tall black trees surrounding me, the woods invading my comfort, their spindly limbs shifting in the corners of my eyes. I struggled to scarf down any food that night. The dark cloud I felt surrounding me grew thicker, darker. I felt more sick than before. I made sure to lock up any food in the cooler outside the tent, and I clambered through the open flap. The air was thick with sprayed air freshener that eventually settled. After reading in the lamplight for some time, I managed to drift into an uneasy sleep. When I awoke, I didn't smell anything. I was lying stomach down, my face resting against my small nylon pillow. As I pulled my face up, I heard a squelch as the fabric of the pillow tugged on my face. I pulled harder, my face freeing from the yellow fabric with a sticky, wet, ripping sound. I looked down at the pillow and dry heaved with disgust at the sight. While appearing to be a decaying gray flap of skin was stuck to the fabric, surrounded by dark, sticky fluid. I looked away in horror and reached for my nose. My nostril was now exposed, and I felt the sticky touch of wet flesh where there must have been skin. My finger grazed something hard and wouldn't budge with a poke, but left a dark and black residue on my hand. The urge of vomit came to fruition before I could escape the oppressive atmosphere of the tent. My stomach acid with less food than before and more black bile. When I was able to gather myself, I found my pocket mirror in the dim morning light that seeped through the tent walls. As I slowly inched it toward my face, my horror was confirmed. A good portion of my right nostril had fallen off onto my pillow, and what was left behind was a dark, sticky residue that resembled molasses. Ugh. The rest of my nose was not much better. The other 2/3 that remained lacked any lifelike color. The skin was gray, dark blue, wrinkling at odd angles. Dizzy with sickness, I wandered out of the tent, still in my underwear. The sun had only just broken, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out for me like bony tendrils. I gathered air into my lungs in big, ragged breaths, feeling hot, humid wind that didn't refresh like it once used to. The gravel poked into my barren feet painfully. I sat on the cooler and collected myself mentally. I tried to call 911 on my cell phone to no avail. I was completely out of range from any service. Then it hit me. The smell encroached again. I could practically taste it. Every odd piece of air that entered through my left nostril reeked of death and decay, of rot so vile it could waste away anything with a mere touch. I gagged and heaved, but nothing would come out. I couldn't continue like this. Even as I tried not to breathe through my nose, I could feel an oppressive stench reach down the back of my throat from the rot. I didn't think I could make it all the way back to the car in this state, let alone another 2 hours after driving. I was willing to do anything to make it stop, so I did. Knowing that the smell only came from my left nostril now and not the bare hole that was once my right nostril, I resolved to remove it quickly. I climbed back into the tent and stumbled around, clumsily searching for my mirror and pocket knife, using shaking hands with sticky blood and bile. When I felt the familiar, firm grip of my knife, I extended back into the morning sky. Sitting on the cooler, I tore off my shirt and balled it up, biting down on it. I held the mirror to my face, bracing for what would come next. I opened the knife and raised it to the underside of my nose. The pain was dull, like pressure being applied to a bruise, as I slowly and nervously cut into the bottom of my septum where it connected to my face. Dark black syrupy fluid leaked onto the knife and dripped down onto my lips. Ella? I gagged and dropped the knife when I saw how easily it cut. I gathered my strength and picked the knife off the ground. Now covered in dirt, I rubbed it off onto my boxers and lifted it to my nose again. As I continued to cut farther up my septum and eventually into the connective tissue of my left nostril to the interior of my nose was revealed. It was cracked, black, brown, contained some oozing rot. The pain began to creep in farther, and I bit down hard on the t-shirt. The sludge that dripped from the wound seeped into the black t-shirt and into my mouth, tasting of bitter acid and onion of rotting flesh, but I didn't stop. Soon, after feverishly hacking away at myself, the bridge of my nose was only hanging to the bone by loose skin. The pain had become more sharp, and the wound began to coagulate with dark blood. In a confused haze, I reached and grasped the loose flesh and tore it off, flinging it to the ground. The white hot pain that followed sent me to the ground, sobbing and gasping at the gravel and chalk. My fingers tightened around small rocks and dirt, cutting and scraping up my fingernails, drawing blood. Looking with wincing eyes toward the sky, I saw sparse trees loom over me. Staring down at me in disgust and horror, they enveloped me in a prison that I could not escape. I fell out of consciousness for some time. I write this now as sort of insurance that if something happens to me, some may find this and know what. Someone may find this and know what I witnessed, what I became victim to. I've since awoken from that terrible surgery. Although I can no longer smell that putrid scent, my vision blurry. There is ringing in my ears. I can taste the rot in my very mouth. And now, as I look back in the mirror, caked in dirt and blood, even through my squinting eyes, I can clearly see it. The skin around my eyes is gray, bruised. Whites are bloodshot with dark, spindling veins. My ears are puffy. The skin is gray. The black fluid leaks out. My gums are bleeding dark. My teeth ache. My tongue has turned sickly shade of blue. Ugh. I mean, very fun. I guess maybe I would have liked, good body horror, right? And I'm not like the biggest fan of body horror. Not that it's not fun to see, someone's head get chopped off or what. I don't know. Body horror can be such a broad thing, but this is very clearly just like a specific body horror story. And I do like the idea of a dude trying to cut, because it's a hole, right? Your nose is a hole. So I like the idea of having to cut out that hole or whatever, that. I don't know, something about that, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. It's creepy. I don't like it. But I would have liked maybe some indication of where this started. I mean, we know that the one day he woke up in the tent, but it's is it an animal that something he picked up from camping? Is it this idea that the more time alone, because he spent so much time alone with himself and alone in this tent where he's it's like a bubble where he's only there in it with himself. Is it this idea that the more one smells themselves, or the more one, the more disgusted, one can be of them with themselves, and then we get a physical manifestation of that. Is it just kind of that, or is there some supernatural, not even thing, but is it an animal? Did something infect him? I guess, did something infect him, or is this just a malady that he succumbed to, as a result of almost this isolation? I don't know. But I think you can kind of read it either way, and I think both are interesting. And yeah, I like that. That probably was the most effective part of me of the story, was taking the knife and trying to dig out the rot from your nostrils. That is pretty, grating and unsettling. But then also, yeah, I think smell, smells can be, it's one of those things where it's it's a story about a guy who smells really bad, and that can sound kind of lame or whatever, but it's smell is really one of those things that you can't, people can't get past, you know what I mean? If something smells bad, it just smells bad. Or if something, it is not, it's one of those things that is, it's maybe not on the forefront of people's mind all the time as something that's so important, but it is pretty important, and so that's where the horror comes in too, is that I'm just well, how long did he smell like this before? Did it happen in the tent, or is this just where it came to fruition, and actually he's been smelling like this for years, or you know, and like finally his nose died because it, whatever, it fucking just fell off of his face because it couldn't handle smell, you know what I mean? And so I think that's kind of fun, and obviously smell and taste go hand in hand, so it's like, yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, you know, I would wanna see like if there was a continuation of the stories, like, you know, would his tongue have to go next? Would his eyes have to go next? I mean, at this point, I mean, just kill yourself, right? Like, just sorry, but like, I couldn't imagine, you know, not having ripped my nose out and then the rest of my face is just becoming so infected. Like, I guess I would go to the hospital, but at the same time, like, you know, it might just be GG's. You might just, you know, be better off, you know, not going on. But yeah, I mean, it's a creepy body horror thing, and it's a interesting concept, right? And it's one of those ones that it's like, this is perfect for a short story because it's not, you know, I wouldn't want to read a whole long story about a guy just decaying, right? You know, it needs to kind of be short, and that's what makes it fun and palatable. Yeah, and I guess if it was some external thing, like, I just would maybe like to know, like, was it an animal? Was it a supernatural thing? You know, stuff like that. But it's also kind of fun not knowing too, and I like just speculating. So I think it was a solid body horror. I mean, in my opinion, if body horror doesn't make you feel like nails on a chalkboard, like, ugh, it's not even worth doing. Because to me, body horror isn't that entertaining, fun anyways. Like, I mean, it is visually, right? Like, in a movie, when something crazy like that happens, it's fun to see, but like, reading about it for me isn't that fun. But this was because it was the right kind of length. It was short. It had a nice kind of development. It wasn't just like, well, look at how gross this thing is, and isn't it gross, you know? It was a little more like, you know, it had the development of it. You know, he saw his nose kind of falling off, and then part of it rips off on his pillow, and he's trying to cut it out. And yeah, I mean, that is all body horror really needs to be in a story like this. I don't think there has to be like a deep, you know, philosophical element to it. It's body horror, right? And even though the story didn't like go into like a philosophical element, I do think maybe some of that was the subtext of the story. Like, maybe it did have to do with like this isolation, and that being in a tent for a week alone by himself. It's like, you know, it's this sense of like, you know, yes, everyone's comfortable with like their own smells and their own whatever, but it's like taking that to the own extreme. Like, maybe your own stink can become poisonous to you, taken to a certain extreme. And like, maybe that philosophically, maybe that if you think about like the philosophical implications of that, maybe that's saying something about like vanity, or you know, narcissism. And when you're too comfortable, when you're so comfortable that yourself with yourself the way you are, that you even start to revel in it, and you start to like enjoy just yourself too much. Like, can that be a bad thing, you know? And I think in this story, obviously, it's kind of saying like, maybe it can, but of course, like, you know, self-acceptance and all that stuff is those are virtues, right? I'm not saying that they're not. They are. I think people should be comfortable with their own musk and their own you know, who they are. But I think that yeah, in this story it's maybe yeah, it's maybe just taking a little bit of take of when you take that to a ridiculous extreme. You know, you might have to freaking start whatever excavating your face, you know. You might start your nose might just fall off and escape you, and then you might have to freaking whatever, you might have to take matters into your own hands. But yeah, it's a cool, fun little body horror thing. I don't think it, you know, I don't think it needs to be that deep. I just kind of wanted to, you know, think about it out loud, because I think that just because a story's simple sometimes doesn't mean that, you know, it's entirely simplistic in every element, you know. Like a story like Jeff the Killer, yeah, is not that deep. It's just a guy who wants to kill people. But a story like this, I think it's well written enough, and it begs the question. I think it begs at least like questioning a little bit and trying to dig a little bit deeper, if only to think about like, well, what, you know, because there's a lot of body horror that, like, you know how people say like The Fly. I mean, that's obviously body horror, but people say how like it's a metaphor for like cancer or something like that. And you know, it's interesting to think like, well, what is this a metaphor for? Is this, you know, is this people getting plastic surgery and nose jobs? And in this story, it's, you know, whatever, he cuts off his nose because he can't stand the smell, but at the same time, like, you know, whatever, his nose was like the first thing to die. So you could also like wonder or take this as like, well, wouldn't the smell be gone once his nose is like kind of falling off or whatever? But then at the same time, it's like, no, the rot just keeps growing. So maybe that's saying something about like, you know, people who you know, try to fix these inferiorities that they have, like with the way that they look or something. And so they're like, well, I don't like this because of this, and then they change that one thing, and then they need to change something else, and they, you know, one problem just leads to another sort of thing. I don't know. I think it's interesting though, and I think, like, you know, body horror has a weird way of like getting into your mind like that, where it can make you think about, like, I don't know, even this story, I was like, you know, I found myself being like, hope I don't smell like that, you know. It just has a weird way of making you think about like your body and your self-image in a different way, and I think that's fun. I think that's, you know, I think horror can be a little bit more thought-provoking than sometimes people give it credit for. So yeah, but oh shit, well, I forgot to pause the music during that last little roundup, but that is gonna do it for me, guys. That is gonna do it for you know, I had these 3 stories on the docket, and I covered them, and it was really fun, and you know, I appreciate all the authors. I'm gonna sign off on my stream now. So thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you, Rude Dude, for stopping by. I'm going to go ahead and message these authors with the link. And if you've watched any of my streams but you're waiting to see if I'll cover your story, I will message you. Just know that I will message you with a link to the live, either as I'm going live or after I go live. But I do try to reach out to everybody who wants me to cover their stories, and I let them know. So yeah, just you know, I look forward to covering stuff in the future. Please keep sending in your stories, and yeah, just look forward to more stories, more horror content. I do want to say here, kind of at the end too, that Miss me and Professor Creepypasta have been talking, and I know I haven't messaged you back, dude. Sorry, I've just been it's this week's been a little crazy, and but yeah, I do want to we are going to maybe try to collaborate in some way, read some stories together or something like that. Talk on a Discord call on live sometime. And yeah, that'll be really fun, and I'm looking to do more collaborations with other authors or other, uh, or YouTubers, whatever, live streamers, really just anything to just kind of, learn and grow my audience and learn, just become a better streamer, really, I mean, is what I want to do. One of the main goals. But yeah, and just to have more fun. And I have a lot of other interests, not just reading horror. So it's like a lot of times I want to talk about movies, or I want to talk about this and that. And so, which I could always do on my live streams, but I want to look into some other ways of going about it. Because if I just did a live stream where I talked about movies, I don't know if anyone would care to see that or watch that. I definitely know I would enjoy it, but I also don't think it's that as fun as like reading a new story. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you. Peace out. Red Death Mask out of here. Adios.